You're not invited. The text message glared at me from my phone screen at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. My hands trembled as I stood there in my lavender bridesmaid dress, holding a folder thick with vendor receipts that totaled $100,000. The wedding would begin at 4 in the afternoon. 6 hours from now, my sister Rachel would walk down the aisle at the Ritz-Carlton ballroom that I had reserved past 7 tiers of French vanilla cake I had ordered, accompanied by the 20-piece orchestra I had hired, surrounded by $10,000 worth of flowers I had selected. I had given my little sister the wedding of her dreams, emptying my savings account to replace what our parents could never provide. Now, with my hair professionally styled and makeup perfectly applied, I had just been uninvited to the very celebration I had created. 3 years earlier, my world shattered with a single phone call from the state police. Our parents had been driving home from their 25th anniversary dinner when a drunk driver ran a red light. They died instantly, leaving me at 32 to become guardian to Rachel, who had just turned 22. The responsibility felt crushing. But as I stood in that funeral home watching my baby sister sob uncontrollably, I made a silent promise to both her and our parents' memory that I would take care of her no matter what. Those first months tested every ounce of strength I possessed. I juggled 2 jobs while completing my MBA at night, determined to secure a better future for both of us. My position as a financial analyst at a tech startup barely covered our apartment rent, so I took on freelance consulting work on weekends. Rachel struggled with grief differently than I did, throwing herself into her undergraduate studies while battling depression. I became her rock, her therapist, her cheerleader, and the closest thing to a mother she had left. "You don't have to do this alone," Rachel had whispered one night as I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by spreadsheets and bills. "I can get a job help out more." "Your job is to finish school," I told her firmly, echoing what our mother would have said. "Let me worry about the rest." The dynamic shifted when Rachel met Thomas during her senior year. He appeared at our apartment one October evening, tall and charming in his pressed khakis and polo shirt, carrying an expensive bottle of wine. A pharmaceutical sales representative with what seemed like ambitious career goals, he impressed me with his attentiveness to Rachel. He remembered small details about her life, brought her favorite coffee during finals week, and spoke eloquently about their future together. "I think he's the one," Rachel confided after 6 months of dating, her eyes sparkling with a happiness I hadn't seen since before our parents died. I welcomed Thomas into our small family unit, grateful that Rachel had found someone who seemed to genuinely care for her. When he proposed on her graduation day with a modest but beautiful ring, I cried tears of joy. My baby sister had found love, stability, and a partner who could share the load I'd been carrying alone. The wedding planning began immediately with Rachel cutting out pictures from bridal magazines and creating Pinterest boards filled with elaborate centerpieces and designer gowns. Her enthusiasm dimmed when she calculated the costs. "Maybe we could do something small," she said one evening, closing her laptop with a sigh. "A backyard wedding or just City Hall with a nice dinner afterward." That night, I checked my bank account. My recent promotion to chief financial officer at the tech company had come with a substantial signing bonus, one I'd planned to invest. But watching Rachel try to shrink her dreams to fit her empty wallet broke my heart. Our mother had always talked about the elaborate wedding she'd throw for her daughters one day, describing the flowers, the music, the celebration of love surrounded by family. What if money wasn't an issue? I asked Rachel the next morning over breakfast. "Lynn, we can't afford fairy tales," she replied, stirring her coffee absently. "I got a bonus at work," I said, making the decision that would change everything. "A big one. Mom always wanted to give you a dream wedding. Let me do this for her for you." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I can't let you spend your money on my wedding." "It's not spending, it's investing." I insisted, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "Investing in your happiness, in honoring Mom and Dad. Please let me do this." The hug she gave me lasted so long I thought she'd never let go. "You're the best sister anyone could ask for," she whispered into my shoulder. We spent that afternoon planning every detail of what would become a six-figure celebration. I should have noticed the way Thomas's eyes lit up when Rachel told him about my offer, should have paid attention to how quickly he upgraded his expectations from modest to magnificent. But I was too caught up in Rachel's joy, too eager to give her everything our parents couldn't. As I stood there reading that crushing text message 3 years later, still clutching those receipts, my phone buzzed again. The sender wasn't Rachel. The messages had come from Thomas's phone, not my sister's. A detail that somehow made the betrayal cut even deeper. 6 months of wedding planning consumed my life in ways I never anticipated. Every Saturday morning while Thomas played golf with his buddies, Rachel and I would meet at coffee shops with binders full of vendor information. I had spreadsheets for everything: catering options, flower arrangements, music selections, photography packages. Rachel attended when her graduate school schedule allowed, but increasingly I found myself making decisions alone. "You have such better taste than I do," Rachel would say, rushing off to study for her social work exams. "Whatever you think is best." I threw myself into creating perfection. The venue search took 3 weeks of touring every upscale location within 50 miles. When we walked into the Ritz-Carlton's grand ballroom with its crystal chandeliers and marble floors, Rachel gasped audibly. "It's exactly like the magazine," she breathed, spinning around to take in the gilded mirrors and soaring windows. "It's $40,000 just for the space," I mentioned quietly, watching her face fall. "Oh, well, maybe we should look at—" "It's perfect," I interrupted, already calculating how to make it work. "You only get married once." The cake tasting became an event unto itself. 7 bakeries, 42 samples, and countless sugar crashes. Later, we found a French patisserie that created edible art. Their specialty 7-tier creation with handmade sugar flowers and gold leaf detail cost $8,000. "That's more than some people's entire wedding budget," Rachel said, looking uncomfortable. "Those people aren't my sister," I replied, signing the contract. Thomas started attending planning sessions around month 3, always arriving late with apologies about work obligations. His initial suggestions seemed reasonable, upgrading the basic bar package to premium liquors, adding past hors d'oeuvres during cocktail hour. But his requests escalated quickly. "My college buddies are expecting a certain level of celebration," he explained when proposing a separate cigar lounge with vintage Cuban selections. "You know how guys are." I noticed Rachel growing quieter during these discussions. When Thomas insisted on flying his groomsmen to Vegas for a 3-day bachelor party weekend, all expenses paid, she barely responded to my questioning look. "It's important to him," was all she'd say later when we were alone. The flower budget ballooned when Thomas decided the centerpieces needed to be more substantial. The photographer became a videography team when he wanted drone footage. The string quartet became a full orchestra because his mother had mentioned how elegant live classical music sounded at her friend's daughter's wedding. I kept writing checks telling myself this was for Rachel, but doubt crept in during small moments. Like when I overheard Thomas on the phone outside the florist. "No, man, it's incredible. 6 figures easy. The sister's loaded from some tech deal. She's covering everything." When I confronted him, he laughed it off. "I was just explaining why we could afford such a nice wedding. You know how people assume things." "But you could have told them the truth," I said, "that it's a gift from family." His smile tightened. "Sure, Lynn, family, that's exactly what I meant." Rachel always defended him. During one particularly tense moment when Thomas insisted on switching to a more expensive caterer because the original one wasn't prestigious enough, I pulled her aside. "This is getting out of hand," I whispered. "We're already at $90,000. Please don't make this about money," she begged. "Thomas just wants our day to be perfect. His family has certain expectations." "His family isn't paying for it," I reminded her. The flash of something in her eyes looked almost like resentment. "No," she said quietly. "They're not." I attributed her mood to wedding stress and graduate school pressure. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. The way Thomas would whisper to Rachel during meetings, her shoulders tensing with each private word. How she stopped making eye contact when signing contracts. The forced smile when vendors addressed me as the wedding planner because I handled every detail. My assistant at work started joking about my second full-time job. "Another wedding call," she'd ask when my phone rang for the 5th time before lunch. Just confirming the transportation schedule, I'd explain already exhausted and the big day still months away. But I pushed forward, determined to give Rachel everything. When the final catering tasting required me to take a half-day off work, I didn't complain. When the venue coordinator could only meet during my crucial board presentation, I rescheduled my meeting. Every sacrifice felt worth it to see Rachel happy, even as that happiness seemed increasingly fragile. The revelation about Thomas's deception to his family came accidentally. My best friend Maria, who worked events at a competing hotel, called me one evening. "Small world," she said. I ran into Thomas's mother at a charity luncheon. She went on and on about how proud she is that her son can provide such an extravagant wedding for his bride. Something about his investments finally paying off. My stomach dropped. His investments. That's what she said. Apparently, he's been telling everyone he struck gold with some pharmaceutical patent deal. "Lynn, what's going on?" I sat in my car outside Rachel's apartment building for an hour that night, trying to decide whether to go upstairs and confront them. In the end, I drove home telling myself it didn't matter who got credit, as long as Rachel was happy. But the seed of unease had been planted, and with each passing day, it grew into something impossible to ignore. 2 months before the wedding, the universe began sending me signals I was too stubborn to acknowledge. The first incident seemed like a simple misunderstanding. Rachel had scheduled bridesmaid dress shopping for a Saturday afternoon, texting me the details of where and when to meet. I arrived at the boutique to find the other 4 bridesmaids already in matching champagne-colored gowns, laughing and taking photos. "Oh, Lynn." Rachel's friend Jessica looked surprised. "We thought you couldn't make it. Rachel said you had a work thing." I found Rachel in the alterations area, her face flushing when she saw me. "You're here," I thought. "Thomas said you texted about a conference call." "I never texted Thomas about anything," I said, slowly watching her fidget with her engagement ring. "Must have been a miscommunication," she mumbled, suddenly fascinated by a rack of veils. The dress they'd selected for me hung differently than the others, its style more matronly despite being the same color. When I suggested trying other options, Rachel's response felt rehearsed. "We already put the deposit down. Besides, you'll be so busy with maid of honor duties you won't even notice what you're wearing." That phrase about maid of honor duties proved ironic when 3 weeks later Thomas casually mentioned I wouldn't need to prepare a speech. "We're keeping toasts to a minimum," he explained over dinner at their apartment. "Just immediate family. Keeps things from dragging on." "But Lynn is immediate family," Rachel said quietly, pushing food around her plate. Thomas reached over to pat her hand, his gesture looking more like a warning than comfort. "Of course she is. I just meant blood relatives, parents, that sort of thing. You understand, right, Lynn?" I understood perfectly. I was good enough to fund their dreams, but not important enough to speak at the celebration. "Whatever makes you both happy." I managed the words, tasting bitter. The venue situation escalated my concerns from mild to serious. I'd been getting email updates from the coordinator about every detail, linen colors, chair arrangements, timeline adjustments. Then suddenly, the email stopped. When I called to confirm a menu change, the coordinator seemed confused. "Mrs. Morrison already approved everything yesterday," she told me, using Thomas's mother's name. "Gloria was here." "Oh yes, she's been wonderful. She said you'd transferred planning duties to her since you're so busy with work. She even brought her own clipboard." I drove to the hotel, immediately finding Gloria in the ballroom, directing staff on where to place the gift table. She wore a St. John suit and an expression of territorial satisfaction. "Lynn, darling." She greeted me with air kisses that didn't quite land. "Thomas mentioned you needed help with the overwhelming details. I'm happy to step in." "I don't need help," I said carefully, "but thank you for the offer." Her laugh tinkled like breaking glass. "Oh, sweetness, it's no offer. It's done." Thomas explained how stretched thin you are trying to juggle everything. Some people simply aren't equipped for event planning of this magnitude. Some people aren't paying for it. I shot back before I could stop myself. Gloria's smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened. Money isn't everything, dear. Breeding and taste matter so much more. Thomas understands that even if others don't. I found Rachel that evening at the library, supposedly studying but staring blankly at her laptop screen. When I told her about Gloria's takeover, she seemed to shrink into herself. "Thomas says his mother has experience with these things," she offered weakly. "Rachel, what's going on? Really going on?" She glanced around the empty study room as if Thomas might materialize from the shadows. "Nothing. Wedding stress. Gloria means well." She told the coordinator she's in charge now. "Maybe that's for the best," Rachel whispered. "You've done so much already." "I've done exactly what I wanted to do," I insisted. "Give my sister the wedding she deserves." Rachel's laugh sounded hollow. Deserves. Right. Because that's how life works. People get what they deserve. The conversation ended when her phone buzzed with Thomas's ringtone. She gathered her things quickly, mumbling about dinner plans. As she hurried away, I noticed she'd lost weight, her clothes hanging looser than they should. Stress, I told myself. Every bride went through it. My discovery of Thomas's business troubles came through professional channels. A colleague mentioned his company during a partners meeting, nothing positive. Curious, I did what any CFO would do and ran a basic background check. 2 lawsuits glared from the screen former business partners, accusing Thomas of embezzlement fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. Both cases settled out of court-sealed records, but the allegations painted a clear picture. I printed everything, my hands shaking as page after page revealed the man my sister planned to marry. A man who'd convinced 2 previous partners to invest their savings in pharmaceutical ventures that existed only on paper. A man whose sales record at his current job showed consistent underperformance masked by charm and excuses. I needed more information before confronting Rachel. That opportunity came when I overheard Thomas outside the country club after another wedding planning session. He stood with his groomsmen near the valet stand, their voices carrying clearly through the evening air. "Set for life, boys," Thomas bragged, lighting a cigarette. "The sister's got more money than she knows what to do with. Tech money, you know, and Rachel's too sweet to ever question anything. After the wedding, I figure 6 months before I can start talking about investment opportunities. Maybe a year before we're looking at houses. Lynn'll bankroll everything to keep baby sis happy." "Doesn't it bother you?" one friend asked. "Using them like that?" Thomas's laugh made my skin crawl. "Using them, I'm giving Rachel the husband she wants and Lynn the purpose she needs. Some people are meant to provide, others to receive. Natural order of things." I sat in my car until they left rage and hurt, battling for dominance. Every check I'd written, every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd funded had been part of Thomas's calculated plan. But worse than his deception was the growing certainty that Rachel knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. And she'd chosen him anyway. 1 month before the wedding, Gloria Morrison orchestrated her masterpiece of manipulation disguised as a family dinner. The invitation came through Thomas, not Rachel, which should have been my first warning. "Mom wants everyone to get better acquainted," he explained during a brief phone call. "Nothing fancy, just dinner at the house, 7 o'clock Saturday." The Morrison estate sprawled across 5 acres in the wealthiest suburb, all manicured hedges and circular driveways. I dressed carefully in my best cocktail dress, bringing an expensive bottle of wine and a small hostess gift. Gloria answered the door herself, her smile sharp as winter air. "Lynn, how lovely. Everyone's already here. We were just wondering if you'd gotten lost. These roads can be so confusing for people not familiar with the area." The dining room buzzed with conversation from at least 30 people. I searched for Rachel, finally spotting her near the far wall with Thomas's aunts. She wore a dress I'd never seen before, clearly expensive, and avoided my gaze when I waved. "Let me show you to your seat," Gloria said, leading me past the main table where Thomas held court, past Rachel's empty chair with its place card in elegant calligraphy, all the way to a small table near the kitchen door. My dining companions included Thomas's ancient great-aunt, who spent the evening discussing her cats, and a couple who turned out to be Gloria's accountant and his wife. "I thought this was family dinner," I mentioned to the accountant's wife. "Oh, it is," she replied. "Gloria always includes the help at these gatherings. So generous of her." The implication hit like ice water. In Gloria's careful seating arrangement, I'd been classified as staff, not family. I watched Rachel take her place at the main table, Thomas's hand possessively on her back as he guided her to the chair. She still wouldn't look my way. Gloria commanded attention for the toast after the second course. She stood regally crystal glass, catching candlelight, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. I wanted to gather everyone to celebrate Thomas and Rachel's upcoming nuptials. She began pausing for appropriate applause. As a mother, nothing brings me greater joy than seeing my son step into his role as provider and protector. Thomas has worked tirelessly to ensure their wedding reflects the Morrison standard of excellence. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. I gripped my water glass tighter. "The venue, the flowers, every exquisite detail," Gloria continued, "represents Thomas's commitment to giving Rachel the life she deserves. Not everyone understands the responsibility that comes with such generosity. The burden of ensuring family is cared for, traditions, upheld, standards maintained." Her eyes found me across the room, holding my gaze as she delivered the final blow. "We're so blessed that Thomas has the means and wisdom to create such magic. Some people live beyond their capabilities, grasping for what they can't afford, but not my son. He's proven that success comes to those who earn it properly." The room erupted in applause and calls of "Hear, hear." I sat frozen, watching Rachel stare at her untouched champagne. She knew. Every person at that main table knew exactly who'd paid for every detail Gloria praised, and they were all complicit in the lie. Dinner stretched endlessly. Course after course appeared while I made polite conversation with the cat lady and tried not to watch Thomas accept congratulations for his largesse. When I excused myself to find the bathroom, I had to pass the main table. Rachel finally met my eyes, her expression pleading for understanding I couldn't give. "Lynn," she started reaching for my hand. Thomas immediately intervened, his movements smooth as a snake. "Sweetheart, Aunt Marion was just asking about your grad school program. Lynn, the powder room's down the hall, second door on the right." Dismissed like a servant given directions. I locked myself in that beautifully appointed bathroom and tried to breathe through the humiliation. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Maria, probably checking on me. I sent a quick text, "In hell, we'll call later." When I returned, dessert was being served, but my appetite had vanished. I made appropriate excuses to my table mates and went to say goodbye to Gloria, maintaining the polite fiction for a few more weeks. "Leaving so soon?" she asked with false concern. "But you'll miss coffee and Thomas's surprise announcement." "Early morning tomorrow." I lied smoothly. "Thank you for including me." "Of course, dear, though I do hope you'll remember your place at the actual wedding. We wouldn't want any confusion about roles and responsibilities." I found Rachel in the hallway, Thomas nowhere in sight for once. "We need to talk," I said quietly, without him. "There's nothing to talk about," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the dining room. "Please, Lynn, just let it go." Let what go? The fact that his mother just spent an hour crediting Thomas for my $100,000 gift, or that you sat there and let her— "You don't understand," Rachel said, tears forming. "It's complicated. Thomas has expectations, his family has a certain image. Built on my money and your silence," I finished. Rachel flinched. "That's not fair. You offered. You insisted." "I offered my sister a wedding gift, not your fiancé a false reputation." Thomas appeared then, his timing impeccable as always. "Everything all right out here, Rachel, sweetheart? You're missing dessert." "I'm fine," she said quickly, swiping at her eyes. "Lynn was just leaving." "Good," Thomas said, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. "Lynn, we need to discuss some boundaries after the wedding. Family dynamics will be changing." "Will they?" I asked, meeting his cold gaze. "How interesting. Rachel, call me when you're ready to talk. Alone." I left them in that hallway, Gloria's voice drifting from the dining room as she regaled her guests with more tales of Thomas's success. The valet brought my car, probably wondering why someone from the help had parked out front. During the drive home, I finally understood the full scope of what I'd been funding, not just a wedding, but Thomas's entire facade, and Rachel had chosen to be his accomplice. That night, I pulled out every contract, every receipt, every email chain related to the wedding. My name appeared on every single one as the responsible party. Not Thomas Morrison, successful pharmaceutical executive. Not Gloria Morrison, society matron. Just Lynn Chen, the sister foolish enough to believe money could buy happiness for someone determined to pursue misery. The lawsuits against Thomas took on new meaning. Those partners hadn't just lost money. They'd lost it to someone who crafted elaborate deceptions with the help of people who should have protected them, just as Rachel should have protected me. My phone rang near midnight. "Rachel." "Please don't hate me," she said without preamble, her voice thick with tears. "I don't hate you," I replied honestly, "but I don't understand you anymore. Thomas says you're trying to control me with money, that you can't let go of being my guardian. He says after we're married, we need space from you to build our own life. Is that what you want, space from me?" The silence stretched so long I wondered if she'd hung up. Finally, "I want everyone to stop making me choose." "I never asked you to choose Rachel. I just asked you to be honest." "I have to go," she said. "Thomas is coming back. He doesn't like when I call you this late." The line went dead. I sat in my living room surrounded by wedding paperwork representing a small fortune and realized I'd already lost my sister. The wedding was just the funeral for our relationship, and I was paying for my own heartbreak. 1 week before the wedding, I made my final attempt to reach the sister I'd raised. Rachel agreed to meet me at our old coffee shop, the one where we'd planned her future after our parents died. She arrived 15 minutes late, constantly checking her phone wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. "Thomas doesn't know I'm here," she said instead of hello, sliding into the booth across from me. "Since when do you need his permission to see your sister?" She removed her sunglasses with shaking hands, revealing eyes puffy from crying. "Please don't start. I only have an hour." I pushed the folder across the table, my heart hammering. "You need to see this." Rachel opened it reluctantly, her face paling as she read the lawsuit documents. Page after page of legal filings, accusations of fraud testimonies from Thomas's former business partners, describing lost retirement savings and children's college funds. "Where did you get these?" she whispered. "Public records. 2 separate cases, Rachel. 2 different partners who trusted him with their money and lost everything." "These are just allegations," she said weakly, though her hands trembled as she turned pages. Nothing was proven. The cases were settled. "Sealed settlements with non-disclosure agreements. Innocent people don't pay to hide the truth." Rachel shoved the papers back at me. "You're trying to sabotage my wedding because you're jealous." Jealous. The word hit like a physical blow. Of what? That I found someone, that I'm moving forward while you're stuck playing mom forever. Her voice cracked. "You think I don't know what you sacrificed. You think I don't feel guilty every single day Thomas is offering me a chance at a normal life. Funded by my money while he tells everyone it's his," I reminded her. "How is that normal?" "You don't understand what it's like," Rachel said, tears streaming. "Everyone always asking if you're taking care of me, if I'm grateful enough, if I know how lucky I am to have you. Do you know what his family calls me? The charity case? They think Thomas is rescuing me from a life of dependency. So you let them believe he's paying for everything." What was I supposed to say? Actually, my sister is funding this entire wedding because I'm too pathetic to afford my own life. At least this way I have some dignity." "Dignity built on lies isn't dignity, Rachel. It's just another cage." She laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You've always been the strong one, the successful one. I'm just the burden you inherited." "You were never a burden," I said, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. "You're my sister. I love you." "Love with conditions," she shot back. "Love that comes with obligations and expectations and the constant reminder that I owe you everything." "I never asked for anything in return. You didn't have to. It was always there, this debt I could never repay. Then Thomas came along and made me feel like I could be someone's equal, not their responsibility. By lying about who he is, about what he's capable of providing." Rachel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face tightening. "He knows I'm gone. I have to go." "Rachel, please, look at those documents again. Think about what you're signing up for." "What I'm signing up for." She stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. "I'm signing up for a life where someone chooses me first, where I'm not the tragic orphan everyone pities, where my wedding isn't another debt on the ledger of everything Lynn sacrificed." "This isn't about ledgers or debt. This is about protecting you from a con artist." "The only con here," Rachel said coldly, "is pretending you did this for me. You did it for Mom, for Dad, for your own need to be the perfect daughter. I'm just the prop in your performance." Her words knocked the breath from my lungs. "How can you say that?" "Because it's true. Everything has to be your way, under your control. The venue you chose, the flowers you selected, the life you planned for me. Thomas is the first person who ever asked what I wanted." "What you wanted? You showed me those Pinterest boards, those magazine clippings." "Because that's what you expected happy Rachel planning her dream wedding while grateful for everything Lynn writes checks. You never asked if I wanted a big wedding. You just assumed then made it happen before I could say no." "You could have said no any time." "Could I really? After you announced you were using your bonus, after you told everyone how you were honoring Mom and Dad, I became the ungrateful sister the moment I had doubts. I felt the ground shifting beneath me, every certainty crumbling. I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" "From choosing wrong, from making mistakes, from living my own life." She was at the door now, pausing for one final blow. "You know what Thomas told me last night? He's putting me on his insurance after the wedding. His really good insurance, so I can finally get help." "Help?" "Therapy. For codependency. For survivor's guilt. For all the ways you keeping me close has kept me from growing up." The door chimed as she left. I sat frozen, coffee growing cold, her accusations replaying in an endless loop. Was she right? Had my love become a prison? Had my protection prevented her growth? My phone rang. Thomas. "Whatever game you're playing ends now," he said without greeting. "Rachel's hysterical. You've upset her with your lies and manipulations." "My lies?" I laughed, sharp and bitter. "That's rich coming from you." "I know exactly what you are," he continued smoothly. "A control freak who can't let go. Rachel told me about the folder, your pathetic attempt to discredit me. Those business disputes were resolved years ago. Resolved with sealed settlements and ruined lives. Bitter ex-partners who couldn't handle legitimate business risks. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Your world is spreadsheets and guarantees. No wonder Rachel feels suffocated." "At least I'm not marrying her for her sister's money." Thomas chuckled. "Is that what you think? That I need your money? I'm marrying Rachel because I love her, because I see her potential beyond being your permanent child. The wedding. That's your guilt, offering not my con. I'd marry her in a courthouse tomorrow if that's what she wanted." "Then why don't you—" "Because unlike you, I actually listen to what she wants. And what she wants is to finally step out of your shadow. The wedding you planned, the one you're so proud of. She hates every overpriced detail, but won't tell you because she's terrified of disappointing the great Lin Chen. You're lying. Ask yourself why she needed me to speak at vendor meetings, why she stopped making eye contact when signing contracts, why she cries every time we discuss table arrangements. Your gift isn't generous, Lin. It's oppressive. If she feels that way, why hasn't she told me the same reason she didn't tell you about the panic attacks or the antidepressants or the nights she stays awake feeling crushed by guilt? You've made yourself so essential to her survival that honesty feels like betrayal. You're manipulating her. I'm freeing her from you, from this sick dynamic where she'll never be more than the helpless little sister, from the life sentence of gratitude you've imposed. So yes, I let my mother believe I'm paying for the wedding. Yes, I take credit for your money, because for once in her life, Rachel gets to be with someone who doesn't see her as a charity case. I never... Save it. Thomas cut me off. Here's what's going to happen. You'll show up to the wedding, play your part, and then fade into the background where you belong. No speeches, no mother of the bride nonsense, no tearful sisterly moments. You'll be a guest, nothing more. I'm paying for everything. Which was your choice? A gift, you said. Well, gifts don't come with conditions or control. They certainly don't grant you ownership of our lives. If you hurt her, the only person hurting Rachel is you. Every check you write, every decision you make for her, every time you swoop in to save her, you're telling her she's incapable. I'm showing her she's enough, flawed, struggling, imperfect, and absolutely enough. The line went dead. I drove home in a daze, Thomas's words, mixing with Rachel's accusations until I couldn't separate truth from manipulation. The wedding contracts sat on my kitchen counter, my name on every line, my promises to every vendor. I'd thought I was building her dream. Had I constructed her nightmare instead? That night, I called Maria, needing someone who'd known us before everything went wrong. Am I controlling? I asked without preamble. Maria sighed. You're protective. Sometimes that looks like control. Rachel says I've kept her from growing up. Maybe, Maria said gently. Or maybe she's found someone who tells her what she wants to hear instead of what she needs to know. Both can be true. I don't know what to do. Show up, be her sister, let her make her own mistakes. Even if the mistake costs her everything. Especially then. That's what love looks like sometimes. Being there to help pick up the pieces instead of preventing them from falling. I hung up more confused than ever. The wedding was in 7 days. Every vendor would expect final payment. Rachel would wear the dress I'd bought to marry a man I'd funded, while his family perpetuated a lie I'd enabled. And somehow, I'd become the villain in her story. The cruelest part was the grain of truth in their accusations. Had I held on too tight, had my grief transformed love into control, had I failed my sister by succeeding too well at protecting her? The questions haunted me through sleepless nights, but one truth remained: the wedding would happen. The only decision left was whether I'd watch my sister marry a liar or become the bitter sister who ruined her happiness. Either way, I'd already lost her. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn sunshine that wedding photographers dream about. I'd been awake since 4, unable to quiet my racing thoughts. My bridesmaid dress hung on the closet door, its champagne fabric catching the early light. The hair and makeup team would arrive at 7, scheduled and paid for by me, like every other detail of this day. By 6:30, I was showered and wrapped in my silk robe, the one Rachel had given me last Christmas, with Sister of the Bride embroidered on the back. The irony wasn't lost on me as I spread vendor contracts across my dining room table. Final payments due upon arrival: $40,000 to the Ritz-Carlton, $8,000 to the florist, $12,000 to the caterer, $5,000 to the orchestra, $3,000 to the photographer and videographer team. Nearly $70,000 in checks, all drawn from my accounts. My phone buzzed with vendor confirmations. The florist would arrive at noon to begin ballroom setup. The caterer needed final head count by 2. The orchestra requested the playlist confirmation. Business as usual for them, the complete destruction of my family for me. I'd finished my coffee and started on makeup when my phone lit up at exactly 10 o'clock. The number was Thomas's, but I knew before opening it that this was the moment everything would change. "You're not invited." 3 words that shattered 3 years of sacrifice. I stared at the screen, reading them over and over, waiting for a follow-up, a correction, an apology, anything that would make this make sense. Nothing came. I called Rachel, straight to voicemail, called again, same result. My hand shook as I dialed Thomas, and to my surprise, he answered on the second ring. "Ah, Lynn, I wondered how long you'd wait before calling." His voice dripped satisfaction. "What is this?" "It's clarity. Rachel and I discussed it last night, and we agreed your presence would add unnecessary tension to our special day." My presence, I planned every detail of this wedding. Thomas laughed, the sound sharp as broken glass. "Which is exactly why you're not needed anymore. The work is done. The checks can be delivered by courier." "You can't be serious." Deadly serious. Mother felt and Rachel agreed that having you there would confuse the narrative. People might ask questions about your involvement, and frankly, that's not the story we want to tell. "The story? This is my sister's wedding." "No," Thomas corrected smoothly. "This is my wedding. To my wife. In my world. You're part of Rachel's past, the painful chapter she's closing. We've decided a clean break is healthiest for everyone." "Let me talk to Rachel." "She doesn't want to talk to you. This was actually her idea, you know. After your little ambush at the coffee shop, she realized how toxic your influence has become." "You're lying." "The invitation revocation came from her phone originally," Thomas said. "But she was too emotional to send it. Kept crying about letting you down gently. I offered to handle it from my phone to spare her the pain." "She wouldn't do this." "Wouldn't she?" "The same woman who sat silent while my mother credited me for your money, who chose me over your warnings. Face it, Lynn. Rachel made her choice, and it wasn't you." My legs gave out. I sank onto the couch, still clutching the phone. "The wedding can't happen without my payments." "About that." Thomas's voice turned businesslike. "You'll messenger the checks to the hotel by 2. The concierge will handle distribution. Unless you want to destroy your sister's happiness entirely, imagine the embarrassment when 200 guests arrive to find no wedding because bitter big sister threw a tantrum." "You're insane if you think—" "I think you'll do exactly what you've always done," he interrupted. "Whatever's best for Rachel. And what's best is for you to accept your dismissal gracefully. Send the check, stay home, and let her start her new life without the weight of obligation you represent." "This won't work. People will ask where I am." "We've prepared for that. A sudden illness so unfortunate. Rachel will bravely carry on despite her sister's absence. Very touching, really. Mother's already practicing her sympathetic face." "You've thought of everything." "I'm protecting my wife from someone who refuses to let her grow. That's what husbands do." "What husbands do is lie to everyone about who's paying for their scam of a wedding." Thomas's laugh was cold. "The only scam here is you trying to buy relevance in Rachel's life. Newsflash, she doesn't need your money anymore. She has me, my insurance, my stability, my family's connections. You're obsolete." "Your stability. You mean the job you're barely hanging on to, the lawsuits you settled, the debts you're hiding. Ancient history that desperate people dig up when they're losing. You've lost Lynn. Accept it." "I want to hear this from Rachel." "What you want stopped mattering the moment Rachel chose me, but I'll tell you what. Send the checks by 2 and I'll make sure she calls you tomorrow. After our honeymoon, we can discuss limited contact moving forward. Birthdays, holidays, that sort of thing. Supervised, of course." "Supervised." "We can't have you filling her head with poison. Today's decision proves you can't be trusted with unfettered access." The rage that filled me burned cold and precise. "You're holding my sister hostage." "I'm protecting my wife from toxic family dynamics. There's a difference." "Let me be clear. I said, voice deadly calm. If Rachel wants me gone, I'll respect that. But I'll hear it from her, not you. You'll hear nothing. You'll send the checks like a good girl, and maybe we'll allow some form of relationship in the future. Push me, and I'll make sure she never speaks to you again. I'm very good at helping her see who truly supports her happiness. The line went dead. I sat in my living room, hair half-styled, makeup unfinished, holding $70,000 in checks, while my sister prepared to marry a monster. The revelation hit with perfect clarity. This had always been the plan. Use me for the money, then discard me before I could interfere with their fiction. My phone rang. Maria. Hey, just calling to wish you luck today with... She paused. Lynn, what's wrong? I've been uninvited, I said, voice hollow, to the wedding I paid for 10 minutes ago by text. Maria's sharp intake of breath carried through the phone. What? That can't be right. Thomas says it was Rachel's idea, that I'm toxic, that my presence would ruin their narrative. Lynn, listen to me. Where are you right now? Home, in my bridesmaid dress, holding checks they expect me to messenger over like some kind of servant. Don't send anything, I'm coming over. Maria. 20 minutes. Don't do anything until I get there. She hung up before I could protest. I stared at the checks, each one representing weeks of planning, choosing, organizing. The florist who'd spent 3 hours helping me design Rachel's bouquet. The caterer who'd created a special menu around her allergies. The orchestra that learned our father's favorite song for the father-daughter dance that would never happen. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Gloria. Thomas informed me of the situation. While I sympathize with your disappointment, I trust you'll behave appropriately. The checks are expected by 2. The wedding will proceed as planned with or without your cooperation. Some people understand their place in the world. I hope you're one of them. 10:15. The hair and makeup team would arrive at Rachel's hotel suite, soon the one I'd booked and paid for. They'd style her hair with the pearl clips that had been our mother's. They'd perfect her makeup while she sipped champagne and laughed with bridesmaids who'd made the cut. Would she think of me at all? Wonder why I wasn't there? Or would Thomas have some smooth explanation that made my absence seem like my choice? The doorbell rang. Maria stood there in workout clothes, having clearly rushed over. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Tell me everything, she said. Every detail. So I did. The text, Thomas's call, Gloria's threat. Maria listened, her expression darkening with each word. You're not sending those checks, she said when I finished. If I don't, there's no wedding. Rachel will be humiliated. Rachel humiliated herself the moment she let this happen. Lynn, they're using you. I know. No, I don't think you do. This isn't just about money. This is about power, control. They've isolated her, made her dependent on Thomas, and now they're eliminating the one person who might interfere. You think this is that calculated? Maria pulled out her phone. I need to show you something. Remember, I told you I work events at competing hotels. Well, I have friends at the Ritz-Carlton. One of them sent me this last week. She showed me a screenshot of an email from Gloria Morrison to the events coordinator dated 2 weeks ago. Please ensure all wedding documentation is updated to reflect Thomas Morrison as the primary contact. There may be some confusion day of regarding authority, but be assured that only Thomas or myself should be considered decision makers. The previous contact may attempt to interfere, but should be politely redirected. Thank you for your discretion in this delicate family matter. 2 weeks ago, I repeated numbly. They've been planning this for 2 weeks. At least, Lynn, this is a coup. They needed your money, but they also needed you gone before you could tell anyone the truth. What do I do? Maria smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. You have contracts, legal contracts with your name on them. Every vendor has you listed as the responsible party. What time did Thomas say the wedding starts? 4 o'clock. And they need the final payments by 2 to set up. Maria's smile widened. What happens if those payments don't arrive? The wedding doesn't happen. Exactly. So the question is, Do you save the sister who betrayed you, or do you let her face the consequences of her choices? I looked at the checks scattered across my table. $70,000 that could stay in my account or fund the final act of Rachel's transformation from my sister to Thomas's wife. The choice seemed impossible until I realized it had already been made. Not by me, but by Rachel when she let Thomas send that text. "I need to make some phone calls," I said quietly. Maria squeezed my hand. "I'll make coffee. This is going to be a long day." As I reached for my phone, one thought crystallized. They wanted me gone. They were about to learn exactly how gone I could be, and how much my absence would cost. I sat in my car outside the bank at 11 that morning, engine running checks laid out on the passenger seat like evidence in a crime I hadn't committed. Maria had left after helping me make a crucial phone call to my lawyer, Jonathan Rivers, who'd handled our parents' estate. He'd listened to the entire story with the patience of someone who billed $400 an hour, then delivered his assessment with surgical precision. "Legally, you're the contracting party for all services. The vendors have no obligation to provide anything without payment from you specifically. If you choose not to pay, they can't proceed with service. It's that simple." But Gloria's email to the venue, irrelevant. She's not on any contracts. Neither is Thomas. They can claim authority all day long, but without your signature or payment, they're just people making noise in a hotel lobby. Could they sue me? For what not gifting them $100,000? You made no written promise to pay for this wedding. Everything is at your discretion. What about Rachel? Could this damage her somehow? Jonathan's pause spoke volumes. "Lynn, I knew your parents. They'd be horrified by how Rachel's treating you. Whatever happens today is a consequence of her choices, not yours." Now I sat in the bank parking lot watching normal people go about their Saturday errands, oblivious to the bomb I was about to detonate in my sister's life. My phone showed 17 missed calls, 6 from Thomas, 5 from Gloria, 4 from numbers I didn't recognize, and 2 from Rachel's friend, Jessica. Nothing from Rachel herself. The text messages were more illuminating. "Thomas, the vendors are asking about payment. Send the checks now. Gloria." "This childish behavior is beneath you. Think of Rachel." Jessica, "Hey Lynn, Rachel's wondering where you are. She seems upset but won't say why." Unknown number, this is the Ritz-Carlton events manager. We need the final payment by 2 p.m. to begin setup. I turned the checks over one by one. The florist who'd spent hours teaching me about flower language, helping me choose blooms that represented family and new beginnings. The caterer who'd sent 3 different versions of the cake samples when Rachel couldn't decide. The photographer who'd scouted locations for the perfect sunset shots. Good people who deserved to be paid for their work. But they'd be paid by the people who'd hired them, and that wasn't me anymore, was it? According to Thomas, this was his wedding, his day, his world. My phone rang. Jonathan. "I've been thinking," he said without preamble. "There's another angle here. Call each vendor, explain the situation. Offer them a choice. They can pursue Thomas and Gloria for payment since they're claiming ownership, or they can cancel services entirely. Most will choose cancellation over a legal battle. That seems cruel to the vendors. Cruel is letting someone steal credit for your generosity, then ban you from the celebration. This is just business." After he hung up, I made my decision. Not in anger, though I felt plenty of that. Not in revenge, though the thought had appeal. I made it from clarity, the kind that comes when someone shows you exactly who they are and what you mean to them. I called the Ritz-Carlton first. "This is Lynn Chen. I have the Morrison Chen wedding this afternoon." "Oh yes, Ms. Chen, we're all set for your arrival with the final payment." "There's been a change. I won't be providing payment." Silence, then carefully, "I see. May I ask why?" "The bride and groom have informed me I'm no longer welcome at the wedding. As I'm sure you understand, I can't pay for an event I've been banned from attending." "But the ballroom, the setup—" "I'm aware. Per our contract, you're welcome to pursue payment from Thomas Morrison or Gloria Morrison, who've claimed responsibility for the event. I'll email you their contact information. Miss Chen, we have 200 guests arriving at 4. Then I suggest you contact the Morrisons immediately. Thank you for your excellent service over these past months. I hung up and worked through the list. Each call followed the same pattern shock confusion than professional acceptance. The florist was the hardest. But I've already loaded the truck, she said, voice small. $10,000 worth of arrangements. I'm so sorry, Patricia. You've been wonderful. But I can't pay for flowers I'll never see at a wedding I can't attend. What should I do with them? I thought of the shelter where Maria volunteered. I have a suggestion. There's a women's shelter downtown that would love fresh flowers. Would you consider donating them? I'll personally pay you $2,000 for your trouble and delivery costs. That's very kind. Yes, I can do that. One by one, I canceled my sister's dream wedding. The caterer agreed to donate the food to local shelters rather than waste it. The orchestra was disappointed but understood. The photographer kept the deposit and wished me well. By noon, I'd systematically dismantled 6 months of planning with 10 phone calls. My phone exploded with notifications. I turned it off, went inside the bank, and deposited every check back into my account. The teller smiled and wished me a lovely weekend. If only she knew. I drove home the long way past the Ritz-Carlton. No signs of wedding prep in the circular drive. No flower delivery trucks. No anxious wedding party members. Just regular Saturday afternoon traffic at a luxury hotel. Back home, I changed out of my bridesmaid dress and into comfortable jeans and a sweater. I poured a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and turned my phone back on at exactly 2 o'clock. 47 missed calls, 83 text messages. The voicemails started playing automatically. Thomas furious. What have you done? The venue just called. Says you canceled. This is illegal. You can't do this. Gloria shrill. You horrible, vindictive girl. How dare you ruin Rachel's day? We'll sue you for everything. An unknown woman. Hi, this is Ashley from the Ritz-Carlton. Mr. Morrison is here demanding we honor the booking, but we can't without payment. He's very upset. Should we call security? Rachel, finally. Rachel sobbing, Lynn, please, I don't understand what's happening. They're saying there's no wedding. Please call me back, please. I'm sorry about the text, Thomas said. Just please call me. I listened to them all, each one painting a clearer picture of the chaos I'd created. By 2:30, Thomas had tried to pay with 3 different credit cards, all declined. Gloria had made a scene so dramatic that hotel security intervened. Rachel had locked herself in the bridal suite bathroom. The text from Maria made me smile. Friend at the Ritz says it's absolute pandemonium. Thomas tried to convince them to set up on credit. Gloria actually offered her jewelry as collateral. You did the right thing. At 3 o'clock, my doorbell rang. I ignored it. At 3:15, it rang again, and again, then knocking. Then Thomas's voice. Lynn, open up. I know you're in there. We can fix this. I sipped my wine and watched a pair of cardinals build a nest in my oak tree. Life went on. Birds still built homes. The sun still shone. And somewhere across town, 200 wedding guests were about to arrive at a hotel with no wedding to attend. My phone rang. Jonathan. Heads up, Thomas just called my office threatening legal action. My assistant told him I don't work weekends and hung up. Thank you, Jonathan. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Rachel's voicemail, the pain in her voice. They took my sister from me long before today. I'm just finally admitting she's gone. Your parents would be proud of you for standing up for yourself. Would they? Eleanor Chen once told me daughters were life's greatest gift and biggest challenge. She said the hardest part was knowing when to let go. I think she'd understand. After we hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk phone, silent for the first time all day. Somewhere my sister was discovering that choices have consequences, that you can't build happiness on someone else's heartbreak, that when you choose a con artist over family, you gamble everything on a lie. The wedding gifts I'd bought Rachel sat in my closet. Our mother's pearl necklace restrung a photo album filled with pictures of our family, a letter I'd written about love and marriage and forever. She'd never see them now. Thomas had made sure of that when he sent his text. By 4 o'clock, when Rachel should have been walking down an aisle scattered with rose petals, I was making myself dinner. By 4:30, when the orchestra should have been playing our father's favorite song, I was eating alone at my kitchen table. By 5, when toasts should have been starting, I was washing dishes and planning my week ahead. The doorbell rang again at 5:30. This time I looked through the peephole. Rachel stood there in her wedding dress, makeup streaked with tears, still beautiful despite everything. She held her phone in one hand and her bouquet in the other, though where she'd gotten flowers was a mystery. "Lynn," she called through the door. "I know you're there. Please, let me explain." I pressed my forehead against the door, heart breaking all over again, but I didn't open it. Some boundaries once crossed can't be uncrossed. Some betrayals cut too deep for immediate forgiveness. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and I knew she meant it. But sorry didn't erase the months of deception. Sorry didn't undo the cruelty of that morning's text. Sorry didn't rebuild trust destroyed for a man who'd shown her exactly who he was, and she'd chosen him anyway. I returned to my balcony, wine refilled, and watched the sun set on what should have been her wedding day. My phone continued its electronic seizure of notifications, but I didn't check them. Tomorrow would bring its own battles. Tonight, I grieved the sister I'd lost and the family we'd never be again. At 2 that afternoon, while I sat in my car, making life-altering decisions, Thomas Morrison stood in the Ritz-Carlton lobby with the confidence of a man who'd never faced real consequences. According to the detailed account Maria's friend, Ashley, would later share, he arrived at 2:30 in his custom tuxedo groomsman, flanking him like an overdressed security detail. "Gentlemen," Thomas announced to the concierge, "we're here to inspect the Morrison wedding setup. Ballroom C." The concierge checked his screen, frowning. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison. I don't show any setup scheduled for Ballroom C today." "There must be a mistake." Thomas's smile tightened. "The Chen Morrison wedding. 4 o'clock ceremony." "Ah, yes, we have a note here." The concierge read from his screen, each word draining color from Thomas's face. "The contracting party, Ms. Lin Chen, called to cancel all services effective immediately. Without final payment, we cannot proceed with any setup." "Cancel?" Thomas's voice cracked. "That's impossible. I'm the groom. This is my wedding." "I understand, sir, but Ms. Chen is the sole name on all contracts. Only she can authorize services or provide payment." "Then process the payment now." Thomas pulled out his wallet, producing a credit card with a flourish. "Whatever the amount, charge it." The events manager appeared, having been alerted to the developing situation. Susan Hartley was a 40-year veteran of wedding disasters, but even she seemed unprepared for this. "Mr. Morrison, the final payment due is $68,000. We'd need full payment to begin setup, and we're already behind schedule if you want to maintain a 4 o'clock start time." 68. Thomas swayed slightly. "Just for the venue. That includes catering, service staff, setup, breakdown, and all contracted additions you requested. The cigar lounge premium bar package, additional past hors d'oeuvres." "Fine, run the card." Susan processed it professionally. It declined. "Must be a limit issue," Thomas said, producing another card. "Try this one." Also declined. By the third card, sweat beaded on Thomas's forehead despite the hotel's aggressive air conditioning. His groomsmen exchanged uncomfortable glances, probably calculating their own financial exposure for the bachelor party weekend Thomas had promised to reimburse. "Perhaps you'd like to call your bank," Susan suggested gently. "Or you could call Lynn and fix this misunderstanding," the best man added, earning a vicious glare from Thomas. "There's no misunderstanding. This is a vindictive attack." Thomas's mask slipped, revealing the ugly desperation beneath. "She can't do this. We have 200 guests arriving. The flowers, the cake." "About that," Susan interrupted. "The florist called to confirm they wouldn't be delivering. The caterer as well. Without Ms. Chen's authorization, I don't need her authorization. This is my wedding." His shout echoed through the marble lobby. Other hotel guests paused to stare. Security guards shifted closer, ready to intervene. "Sir, please lower your voice," Susan said firmly. "Perhaps we should discuss this in my office." "I'm not going anywhere until this is fixed." Thomas pulled out his phone, stabbing at it viciously. "Mom, get down here now. Bring your checkbook." While Thomas made increasingly frantic calls, word spread through the wedding party. Bridesmaids in robes gathered in the bridal suite, voices rising in confusion and alarm. Jessica would later describe the scene. "Rachel kept saying Lynn would never do this, there had to be a mistake. But when she tried calling, Lynn didn't answer. That's when we found out about the text Thomas sent from his phone. Rachel went white. She locked herself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out." Gloria Morrison arrived at 3:15 in full mother-of-the-groom regalia, her fury preceding her like a storm front. She swept into the lobby, took one look at her son's panicked face, and turned on Susan like an avenging angel. "What kind of establishment are you running?" Gloria's voice could have etched glass. "We are the Morrison family. We don't get refused service." "Mrs. Morrison without payment." "Then take payment." Gloria opened her purse, producing a checkbook. "How much?" $68,000, ma'am." Gloria's pen hesitated. "That's substantial." "It's the contracted amount for all services. We'd also need additional fees for rush setup as we're now significantly behind schedule." "This is extortion." "This is business," Susan replied coolly. "We provide services. Someone pays for them. Ms. Chen chose not to pay, which is her right as the contracting party." "Her right." Gloria's voice rose to near shriek. "She has no rights here. This is my son's wedding." "Which someone else was paying for," Susan observed. Rather generously, I might add. The standoff continued for 20 minutes. Gloria wrote a check for $20,000, claiming it was a deposit while they sorted out this confusion. Susan politely declined, explaining they needed full payment or no, services would be provided. Meanwhile, Thomas had retreated to a corner phone pressed to his ear as he cycled through damage control calls. His side of the conversations painted a picture of escalating disaster. "No, Dad, I need more than that, because it's complicated. Yes, I know what I said about paying for it myself. Just wire whatever you can." "Bradley, remember that investment opportunity I mentioned? I need that capital now. Today. I don't care if the markets are closed." "Kevin, my man, about that loan we discussed. Yeah, for the business expansion." Well, actually, each call ended the same way promises to help that evaporated when dollar amounts were mentioned. By 3:45, with guests beginning to arrive, Thomas had scraped together exactly $12,000 in promised transfers that wouldn't clear until Monday. The death blow came when Ashley overheard him on a final desperate call. "Mr. Whitman, Thomas Morrison, you handled those settlements a few years back. I need a loan against future earnings. No, not that kind of trouble again. Hello, hello." Gloria, meanwhile, had progressed from threats to bargaining. "Surely we can work something out. A payment plan, perhaps. We're good for it. The Morrison name means something in this town." "I'm sure it does," Susan agreed. "But our vendors require payment today. The orchestra is asking whether to unload their instruments. The caterer wants to know if they should redirect the food delivery. I need answers." "This is that girl's fault," Gloria spat. "Lynn, she's doing this out of spite, jealousy. She couldn't stand that Thomas chose someone else." Susan's expression suggested she'd heard enough. "Ma'am, Ms. Chen paid deposits totaling $30,000 over 6 months. She attended every planning meeting, selected every detail. If she chose to withdraw support, perhaps you should ask why." "How dare you question?" "I'm not questioning anything. I'm stating facts. It's now 3:50. Guests are arriving for a wedding that doesn't exist. What would you like me to tell them?" The lobby had become a circus. Wedding guests milled about in increasing confusion. The photographer arrived, took one look at the chaos, and left. The florist called to confirm the shelter delivery had been completed, a detail that sent Gloria into fresh hysterics when she overheard it. "She gave away our flowers to homeless people." Thomas finally snapped. "Shut up, Mother, just shut up!" His perfect facade cracked completely. "None of this would have happened if you hadn't pushed me to cut her out. Simplify the guest list, you said. Show her who's in charge. Don't you dare blame me for your failure to manage that woman properly." Their argument drew a bigger crowd. Someone started recording on their phone. Security moved in politely but firmly suggesting they move their discussions somewhere more private. That's when Rachel appeared. She stood at the top of the grand staircase in her wedding dress, a vision in white satin and shattered dreams. The lobby fell silent. Even Gloria stopped mid-tirade. Rachel descended slowly, each step measured despite her visible trembling. She looked at Thomas, at his mother, at the gathered guests, at the hotel staff, waiting patiently for resolution. "Where's Lynn?" she asked quietly. "That bitch destroyed everything," Thomas snarled. "She canceled it all. The venue, the food, the flowers, gone." "Because you uninvited her," Rachel said, voice stronger. "To her sister's wedding that she paid for." "We discussed this. You agreed." "I agreed to nothing." Rachel's composure cracked. "You sent that text while I was in the shower. You told me it was for the best, that she'd understand, that we'd explain later." "Baby, please, not here." "Where then? In the ballroom that doesn't exist. During the reception that won't happen. In front of the guests who came to watch me marry a man who doesn't exist." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about the lawsuits, the debts, the lies." Rachel pulled off her engagement ring, holding it up to the light. "This isn't even real. Is it just like everything else about you?" The lobby erupted. Guests gasped. Gloria shrieked denials. Security flanked the group, ready to intervene if things turned physical. But Thomas just stood there, mask finally gone, revealing the desperate con man beneath. "Rachel, sweetheart, let's discuss this privately." "Discuss what?" "How you convinced me to betray the only family I have left. How you isolated me from my sister. How you made me believe she was controlling when you were the one pulling every string." She turned to the events manager. "Susan Wright, I apologize for all of this. Please bill any cancellation fees to Thomas Morrison. After all, he's the successful businessman who funded this whole affair. Right, Gloria?" With that, Rachel walked out of the Ritz-Carlton, still in her wedding dress, leaving Thomas to face 200 confused guests and a hotel demanding $68,000 he'd never had. By 4:15, when the ceremony should have been ending, security was escorting the Morrison family from the premises. By 4:30, guests were sharing the story on social media, complete with videos of Gloria's meltdown and Thomas's unraveling. And somewhere across town, I sat on my balcony, unaware of the full scope of the chaos I'd unleashed, but certain of one thing, the truth. Like the wedding flowers now brightening a women's shelter had finally found its proper home. While Thomas faced his public humiliation in the hotel lobby, Rachel experienced her private devastation in the bridal suite. According to her bridesmaid Amber, who later shared the story with mutual friends, the unraveling began at exactly 3 that afternoon. Rachel sat at the vanity while the makeup artist added finishing touches, her phone buzzing insistently on the table. She'd been ignoring it, following the old superstition about grooms not contacting brides before the ceremony. But when Jessica burst in, face flushed from running in heels, the fairy tale shattered. "Rachel, there's a problem downstairs. Thomas is in the lobby yelling at staff. Something about payments." "What kind of problem?" Rachel asked the makeup artist's hand, freezing mid-stroke. "I don't know exactly, but I heard your sister's name. The manager is saying something about canceled contracts." Rachel grabbed her phone, seeing 17 missed calls from Thomas and a string of increasingly frantic texts. "Where are you? We have a situation. Lynn canceled everything. Answer your phone." She dialed Thomas, her hands shaking. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Finally, your sister has lost her mind. She canceled the entire wedding. Venue, food, flowers, everything. That's impossible, Rachel said, though ice formed in her stomach. Lynn wouldn't. She did. The hotel wants $68,000 or they won't set up anything. My cards aren't working. I need you to call her. Fix this now. Your cards aren't working, Rachel echoed the makeup artist, quietly packing up her supplies. It's a banking error. Look, that doesn't matter right now. What matters is your psychotic sister is trying to ruin our wedding. Get down here. Thomas, why would she cancel everything? A pause, then defensive. How should I know? She's always been unstable. Jealous. You said so yourself. I never said. Rachel stopped remembering all the conversations where Thomas had put those words in her mouth, and she'd been too tired to argue. The text. This is about the text you sent. The text you approved, he shot back. You said she was too controlling, that we needed space. I said I was overwhelmed. I never said to uninvite her. Semantics. Look, baby, we can assign blame later. Right now, I need you to call Lynn and beg. Grovel if you have to. Remind her this is your day. My day. Rachel's voice rose. My day that she planned every detail of my day that she paid for while you told everyone it was your money. Not now, Rachel. Then when after the wedding that's not happening. During the honeymoon, we can't afford. The bridesmaids clustered near the door, pretending not to eavesdrop while obviously hanging on every word. Jessica stepped forward, voice gentle. Rach, maybe you should go downstairs. See what's actually happening. Rachel stood, her dress rustling. Thomas, I'm coming down. Don't do anything else until I get there. Hurry, guests are starting to arrive. She hung up and turned to her bridesmaids. Can someone try calling Lynn, please? They all reached for their phones, but Rachel already knew it was futile. Lynn had been uninvited via text at 10 that morning. It was now past 3. If her sister had wanted to be reached, she would have answered by now. The elevator ride felt endless. Rachel caught her reflection in the mirrored walls, perfect dress, perfect hair, perfect makeup, all dressed up for a wedding that was evaporating like morning mist. The thousands Lynn had spent on this dress alone made her stomach churn. The lobby scene exceeded her worst expectations. Thomas and Gloria stood near the concierge desk, both talking over each other to a patient hotel manager. Wedding guests milled about in confusion. Someone's child ran past in a flower girl dress, oblivious to the adult drama. Gloria spotted her first. Thank God, talk sense to these people. They're being completely unreasonable. Mrs. Morrison. The manager interjected. We're being professional. Services require payment. Without it, we cannot proceed. But Lynn paid deposits, Rachel said. Substantial deposits. Yes, which covered preliminary costs. The balance of $68,000 was due today. Ms. Chen informed us this morning she would not be providing payment and canceled all services. This morning, after the text, Rachel turned to Thomas. Show me your phone. What? Your phone. Show me the text you sent Lynn. This isn't the time. Show me the text, Thomas. He reluctantly pulled out his phone, scrolling to the message. Rachel read it, each word a nail in her relationship's coffin. You're not invited. 3 words that had destroyed everything. You sent this at 10, she asked quietly. We agreed she was causing too much stress. I was in the shower. You sent this while I was in the shower, then told me it was handled. I thought you meant you'd talked to her about boundaries, not banished her entirely. Same difference. Same difference. Rachel's voice could have frozen hell. The woman who raised me, who paid for all of this, and you thought banning her was the same as setting boundaries. Can we discuss this later? Gloria interjected. The immediate problem is salvaging the wedding. There is no wedding, Susan the manager said firmly. Without payment, we cannot provide any services. The ballroom remains locked. The caterer has been redirected. The flowers have been donated to charity. Donated. Rachel felt hysteria building. She donated my wedding flowers. To a women's shelter, I believe. Ms. Chen was quite specific. Rachel laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. Of course she was. Lynn's always specific, always thoughtful. Even in her anger, she made sure beauty went somewhere it would be appreciated. "This isn't funny," Thomas snapped. "No, it's not. It's tragic." Rachel looked around the lobby, seeing familiar faces watching the show. All these people came to watch me marry the man of my dreams. Instead, they're witnessing the nightmare he created. "Rachel, please, not here." "You're right, not here." She gathered her skirts, preparing to leave. "Jessica, can you please inform the guests that the wedding is canceled? Thomas will explain why." "Where are you going?" Thomas grabbed her arm. "We can fix this. Call Lynn. She'll cave if you cry enough." Rachel jerked free. "The only person I want to cry to is the sister you made me betray, but she won't answer my calls and I don't blame her." "This is all a misunderstanding," Gloria proclaimed to the growing audience. "A family squabble blown out of proportion. Rachel dear, surely you can see—" "What I see," Rachel interrupted, "is that I chose a man who lied about everything over a sister, who gave everything. I see that I let you both convince me that love was control and generosity was manipulation." "You're being dramatic," Thomas said. "This is just wedding stress." "No, this is clarity." Rachel pulled off her engagement ring, pressing it into his hand. "Here, maybe you can pawn this for honeymoon money. Oh wait, it's probably as fake as everything else about you." She turned to leave, then paused. "Susan, what happens to the food?" "Ms. Chen arranged for it to be donated to 3 homeless shelters, the cake as well." "Of course she did." Tears finally came streaking her perfect makeup. "Even furious, she thinks of others. That's who my sister is. That's who I betrayed for." She gestured at Thomas. "This." Dell, the walk back to the elevator stretched forever, every step watched by 200 guests. Behind her, Thomas's voice rose in fresh arguments. With staff, Gloria shrieked about lawsuits, and her dream wedding completed its transformation into a nightmare. In the suite, her bridesmaids waited with sympathetic faces and boxes of tissues. Rachel collapsed on the couch, wedding dress pooling around her like spilled milk. "We couldn't reach Lynn," Amber said softly. Her phone goes straight to voicemail. "She blocked me," Rachel whispered. "My own sister blocked me." "What happened?" Jessica asked. "Really happened." So Rachel told them. Not the version Thomas had crafted about an overbearing sister trying to control her life, but the truth. How Lynn had sacrificed everything after their parents died. How Thomas had slowly poisoned her against the one person who'd always been there. How she'd sat silent while his family erased Lynn's generosity and replaced it with lies. "Why didn't you tell us?" Amber asked. "Because I was ashamed and trapped, and so tired of being grateful." Rachel accepted a tissue, dabbing carefully at her eyes. "Thomas made me feel like I could be something other than the orphaned girl living off her sister's charity. I wanted that feeling so badly I ignored every red flag." "What are you going to do now?" Rachel looked at her phone at the last message she'd sent Lynn a week ago. "Can't wait for you to see me in the dress. You'll cry happy tears, I promise." "I'm going to do what I should have done months ago," she said. "Tell the truth, all of it. Then hope someday my sister can forgive me for choosing a con artist over family." "You think Thomas is actually a con artist?" Jessica asked. Rachel laughed bitterly. "He convinced me to let him take credit for a $100,000 wedding he couldn't afford a penny of. He isolated me from my only family. He made me doubt the person who loved me most. What else would you call it?" A knock interrupted them. Amber answered, returning with an envelope. From the front desk. Rachel opened it, finding a bill for the suite. $800 for 2 nights due immediately. At the bottom, a handwritten note. "Ms. Chen's credit card has been removed from this reservation. Please provide alternate payment." "He can't even pay for the room," Rachel said numbly. "The room where I got ready for our wedding, and he can't afford it." "Do you have a credit card?" Jessica asked practically. "In my regular purse. In the apartment Thomas insisted we rent that we're probably getting evicted from." Rachel stood, decision made. I need to go to Lynn's, not to fix this mess, but to apologize, to look her in the eye and admit what I've done. In your wedding dress, Rachel looked down at the $10,000 gown Lynn had bought despite her protests that something simpler would do. Yes, let her see exactly what her money bought a fool in a pretty dress who threw away real love for an illusion. They helped her gather her things, the suite that had buzzed with excitement that morning, now feeling like a funeral parlor. As they prepared to leave, Rachel's phone rang. Thomas. She declined the call, then typed a single text. The wedding you couldn't afford is over. The relationship built on lies is over. Send my things to Lynn's address. At least there, I know I'll be welcome even if I don't deserve it. Then she blocked his number, Gloria's too, and walked out of the hotel toward the hardest conversation of her life. Behind her, 200 guests dispersed with stories that would become legend, and somewhere across the city, $68,000 remained safely in her sister's bank account. The wedding that never was had ended, but the reckoning had just begun. By 4 o'clock, when Rachel should have been reciting vows in a ballroom filled with roses and candlelight, the Ritz-Carlton lobby had transformed into a theater of public humiliation. According to multiple witness accounts that would later surface on social media, the scene was one of barely controlled chaos. Thomas stood near the concierge desk, his phone pressed to his ear, cycling through an increasingly desperate list of contacts. Each conversation followed the same arc: initial confidence, growing panic, then bitter defeat. His groomsmen had long since abandoned him, mumbling excuses about prior commitments as they fled the disaster. "This is insane," Cousin Margaret told her husband loudly enough for everyone to hear. Charlotte's wedding last month was half this price and twice as elegant. "Didn't Thomas say he was funding this himself?" another guest wondered. "Something about a pharmaceutical patent." Gloria attempted damage control, her practice society smile growing more strained with each passing minute. "Technical difficulties with the banks," she assured anyone who'd listen. "You know how unreliable electronic transfers can be on weekends." But the guests weren't buying it. They'd witnessed Thomas's credit cards declining, heard his frantic phone calls begging for loans, watched hotel security hover nearby as voices rose. The Morrison family facade was crumbling in real time, and everyone had front row seats. Rachel's college roommate, Sarah, later posted a detailed account. The worst part was watching Rachel's friends from the hospital where she volunteers. These people who barely have money themselves had scraped together funds for gifts, taken time off work, arranged babysitters, all to celebrate a wedding that the groom couldn't actually afford. By 4:30, when toast should have begun, the hotel staff had started politely but firmly asking guests to vacate the lobby. Without a paid event, they couldn't have 200 people creating congestion and confusion for other patrons. "But where are we supposed to go?" demanded Thomas's Aunt Priscilla, resplendent in a beaded gown that cost more than most people's rent. "I'm afraid that's not our concern, ma'am," Susan replied with professional calm. "Perhaps Mr. Morrison has made alternative arrangements." All eyes turned to Thomas, who'd gone pale beneath his spray tan. We're working on... There might be a restaurant." "A restaurant!" Priscilla's voice could have stripped paint. For 200 people with no reservation. That's when Thomas's ex-fiancée made her entrance. Melissa Hartwell arrived as a +1 with Thomas's former business partner, David Chen. She wore a stunning red dress that she'd later admit was chosen specifically to stand out. But it was her smile, sharp as a blade, and twice as dangerous, that drew attention. "Tommy," she called out using the nickname he'd always hated. "Having a bit of trouble with the venue. How familiar." Thomas froze. "Melissa, what are you doing here?" "David received an invitation. Wasn't that sweet of you? Though I notice you forgot to mention on the invitation that someone else was footing the bill." She turned to Gloria with mock sympathy. "This must be so embarrassing for you. At least when he pulled this with my family, we caught on before the actual wedding day." "I don't know what you're implying," Gloria began. "Oh, I'm not implying anything," Melissa interrupted. "I'm stating facts. 3 years ago, your son convinced my father to invest in our wedding, claimed he had money tied up in overseas accounts. Daddy paid for everything while Thomas promised to reimburse him after the transfers cleared. The lobby had gone silent except for the classical music playing softly through hotel speakers. Every guest leaned in, captivated by this unexpected twist in the drama. "Tell them what happened next, Tommy," Melissa prompted. "Or should I—" Thomas's jaw worked soundlessly. Sweat had destroyed his carefully styled hair, leaving it limp and desperate-looking. "No, well then." Melissa addressed the crowd like a prosecutor addressing a jury. 2 weeks before our wedding, I found out he'd been taking loans from my bridesmaids, telling them it was for surprise honeymoon upgrades. He'd also maxed out 3 credit cards he'd taken out in my name without my knowledge. Gasps rippled through the assembled guests. Someone whispered, "Identity theft." When I confronted him, he had the audacity to claim it was a misunderstanding, that he was just managing our joint finances. We hadn't even married yet. Melissa laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. "I canceled everything just like Lynn did. Smartest decision I ever made." "That's enough," Gloria snapped. "You're just a bitter ex trying to cause trouble." Bitter. Melissa's smile widened. "Honey, I'm grateful. Your son taught me valuable lessons about trust verification and the importance of credit monitoring. I should thank him, really." She turned back to Thomas, who looked like he wanted the marble floor to swallow him whole. "I am curious about one thing, though. What was the plan this time?" "Let me guess. Convince the new bride that her sister was controlling, isolate her from family, then slowly take over financial control, classic Tommy playbook. You don't know anything about my relationship with Rachel," Thomas managed. "I know she's standing behind you in a wedding dress that cost more than you make in 3 months, Melissa observed. "Oh wait, that's not Rachel, that's—" Everyone turned to see Rachel entering the lobby still in her wedding gown, but now accompanied by her bridesmaids. She'd clearly been crying, but her chin was raised, shoulders square. The crowd parted as she approached the center of the chaos. "There is no relationship," Rachel announced clearly. "Not anymore." "Baby, please." Thomas started toward her. "This is all a misunderstanding. Melissa is lying." "Like you lied about funding our wedding, like you lied about your business success, like you lied about loving me when all you really loved was my sister's money." The crowd had formed a circle now, guests holding up phones to record what was clearly going to be social media gold. Gloria tried to intervene, but Rachel raised a hand to stop her. "No, Gloria, you've said enough. For months you've acted like Thomas was doing me a favor by marrying me, like I should be grateful someone of his caliber would choose an orphan with no family money." "I never said—" "October 15th, Rachel continued, "at the country club. You told Mrs. Pemberton that Thomas was so generous to take on a girl with baggage. November 3rd at the engagement party, Lynn paid for you, introduced me as Thomas's charity case. December 10th. "Enough," Gloria's composure finally cracked. "Yes, I had concerns any mother would. You came with nothing." "I came with a sister who loved me enough to give me everything," Rachel shot back, "and I repaid her by letting you and your son turn me against her." She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many guests as possible. "Everyone here should know the truth. Lin Chen, my sister, paid for every single element of this wedding. The venue, the food, the flowers, the dress I'm wearing, all of it. Over $100,000 spent to make my dreams come true." Murmurs of shock rippled through the crowd. Many had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. "And how did we thank her?" Rachel's voice broke. "Thomas uninvited her this morning, sent a text message banning her from the wedding she created, so she canceled it, all of it, and she had every right to." "This is family business," Thomas tried. "We don't need to air it publicly." "You made it public when you lied to everyone about who was paying," Rachel said. "When you let your mother give toasts praising your generosity. When you stood by while my sister was erased from her own gift." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to find something. I kept every receipt Lynn showed me, every contract. Want to know what she wrote on the final venue payment? For Rachel, with all my love. May your day be as beautiful as Mom and Dad always dreamed. Several guests wiped at their eyes. Even the hotel staff seemed moved by the revelation. That's who you convinced me to betray. Rachel continued, looking directly at Thomas. A woman who honored our dead parents by trying to give me their dream for me. And I chose you, a man who can't even pay for the hotel room where I got ready. How dare you air our private matters, Gloria sputtered. Private. Rachel laughed bitterly. You made it public when you sent out 200 invitations to a wedding funded by lies, when you posted on Facebook about your son's successful business ventures, when you bragged to everyone about a Morrison family wedding that was actually a Chen family gift. Thomas's phone rang. He answered it reflexively, probably hoping for salvation. Instead, his face went gray as he listened. What now? Rachel asked. Another creditor. Maybe someone else you borrowed from. The apartment complex, Thomas said numbly. The check bounced. They're starting eviction proceedings. The check for our apartment bounced. Rachel's voice rose. The apartment you insisted we needed, the one you said you were handling. I can explain. No. Rachel cut him off. No more explanations, no more lies, no more anything. She turned to address the crowd one final time. I apologize to everyone who wasted their time and money coming here today. If you want someone to blame, blame me. I'm the fool who chose a con artist over family, who let pride and manipulation blind me to real love. Rachel, sweetheart, someone called out. Where will you go? Rachel smiled sadly. To my sister's house, to beg forgiveness I don't deserve, to try to rebuild what I helped destroy, and to remember that family isn't about blood or money or wedding flowers. It's about who shows up when your world falls apart. She gathered her dress and walked toward the exit, pausing only to hand Susan, the manager, an envelope. This is a thank you card for Lynn. When she contacts you about final billing, please give it to her. Tell her... Rachel's voice broke. Tell her I know sorry isn't enough, but it's where I'm starting. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Rachel left, followed by her bridesmaids. Thomas started after her, but David Chen stepped into his path. Let her go, David advised. Haven't you done enough damage? This isn't over, Thomas snarled. I'll sue Lynn for breach of contract, intentional infliction of emotional distress. She'll pay for humiliating me. Melissa laughed. With what lawyer you couldn't afford a parking ticket, much less a lawsuit. Besides, discovery would be fascinating. I'm sure Lynn kept excellent records of every penny she spent on your behalf. The crowd began dispersing, guests murmuring among themselves as they headed for exits. Some stopped to take selfies in the opulent lobby, captioning them with variations of, attended the wedding that wasn't, and money can't buy class. Gloria made one last attempt at spin control. This is all a terrible misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. The Morrison family regrets any inconvenience. The Morrison family, Priscilla interrupted. Gloria, your son just embarrassed us in front of everyone who matters in this city. Don't you dare invoke the family name. Within an hour, wedding scam drama was trending locally. Videos of Thomas's meltdown, Rachel's speech, and Melissa's revelations went viral. Someone creative edited together a montage set to Gold Digger, which gained 10,000 views in its first hour. By 6 that evening, when the reception dinner should have been served, Thomas sat alone in the hotel bar, his tuxedo rumpled, and his credit card still declined. Gloria had abandoned him after his aunt threatened to have her removed from the family trust. His groomsmen wouldn't return his calls. The bartender who'd witnessed the entire afternoon's drama set down a glass of water. Rough day. Thomas laughed hollowly. You could say that. For what it's worth. The bartender said, that sister sounds like good people. Paying for her family's wedding, then donating everything to charity when they did her wrong, that's class. You don't understand, Thomas began. I understand plenty, the bartender interrupted. I've seen a lot of weddings here. The ones that last, they're built on truth. The ones that don't." He gestured at Thomas. "Well?" Thomas's phone buzzed. A text from his landlord. "Locks changed per eviction notice. Your belongings will be in storage. Pay $500 to retrieve." He stared at the message, finally understanding that his carefully constructed house of cards hadn't just fallen, it had been obliterated. The woman he'd thought would be his meal ticket was gone. The reputation he'd built on lies was destroyed. The family who'd enabled him had abandoned him. And somewhere across the city, Lin Chen sat on her balcony with a glass of wine, completely unaware that her simple act of self-respect had triggered an avalanche that buried Thomas Morrison's delusions forever. By 6 that evening, the Ritz-Carlton lobby had become a ghost town compared to the earlier circus. The elegant space that should have hosted celebration now witnessed the final act of Thomas Morrison's spectacular fall from grace. He stood near the concierge desk with Rachel, both looking disheveled and defeated, making one last desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. I sat in my living room, finally answering my phone after hours of silence. Maria was with me, having arrived with Thai food and a bottle of wine, determined to keep me company through whatever came next. When Thomas's number appeared on my screen, I almost declined again. But something, maybe morbid curiosity, maybe the need for closure, made me answer. "Lynn." His voice had lost all its usual smooth confidence. "Thank God, we need to talk." "We don't need to do anything," I replied calmly. "You made that clear this morning." Maria leaned closer, and I put the phone on speaker so she could hear. "That was a mistake," Thomas rushed on. "A huge misunderstanding. We were stressed, not thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to send a text uninviting me from a wedding I paid for." "About that," Thomas's tone shifted, trying for authoritative. "What you did today was illegal, breach of contract. I've already spoken to my lawyer." Maria rolled her eyes. I almost smiled. "Your lawyer?" I asked. "The same one who handled your fraud settlements." Silence. Then, with forced bravado, "Those were business disputes completely unrelated. The point is, you made verbal promises to multiple vendors. That's binding. You'll be liable for damages." "Actually," I said, pulling up the email from Jonathan on my laptop, "my lawyer disagrees. Would you like me to read you his assessment? He's quite thorough about the difference between gifts and contractual obligations." "Lawyers can argue anything," Thomas blustered. "But imagine the publicity. Successful tech executive ruins sister's wedding out of spite. The headlines write themselves." "You're right," I agreed. "They do. Groom caught in six-figure wedding scam has a nice ring to it. Or maybe sister pays $100K for wedding gets uninvited day of. I'm sure the business journals would love to investigate your pharmaceutical patent success too." Another pause. When Thomas spoke again, his desperation was naked. "What do you want?" "Nothing. I wanted to attend my sister's wedding. You made that impossible, so I made the wedding impossible. We're even." "Even?" His voice cracked. "You humiliated us in front of everyone. Gloria's been disowned by her family. I'm being evicted. Rachel's a mess." "Put her on." "What?" "Put Rachel on the phone. Or is she too busy being controlled by you to speak for herself?" Shuffling sounds, whispered argument, then Rachel's voice, thick with tears. "Lynn!" My heart clenched despite everything. "Rachel, I'm sorry," she burst out. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know about the text until after. Thomas said, but it doesn't matter what he said. I should have stopped it. Should have stood up for you. Should have chosen your family over a con man," I finished quietly. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, exactly that." Maria squeezed my hand in silent support. "Do you know why I canceled everything?" I asked. "Because we hurt you. Because we used you. Because I let Thomas and his mother turn me into someone horrible." "All true," I acknowledged. "But mostly because I realized I wasn't losing you today. I'd already lost you months ago. The wedding was just the funeral." Rachel sobbed. In the background, I could hear Thomas telling her to pull herself together, that guilt wouldn't fix anything. The fact that he was still trying to manage her emotions, even now, told me everything about their dynamic. "Can we fix this?" Rachel asked. "Not the wedding, us. Can we fix us?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. Trust once broken doesn't magically repair itself with apologies. "I'll do anything. Therapy, family counseling, whatever you need. What I need is for Thomas to stop coaching you through this conversation." Sudden silence. Then Thomas's voice, no longer pretending he wasn't listening. "Fine. You want to hash this out? Let's be real. You've gotten your revenge. The wedding's ruined. We're publicly humiliated. What more do you want?" "I want you to tell the truth," I said simply, "to everyone. Post on social media, send emails to every guest, call your mother's country club friends. Admit you lied about paying for the wedding. Admit you isolated Rachel from her family. Admit you're a con artist who targets vulnerable women. That's slander. Truth is an absolute defense against slander claims." I quoted Jonathan. "Want to test it in court? I have receipts, contracts, bank statements. Plus, I'm sure Melissa would love to provide a deposition about your history." "You've been talking to Melissa?" "No, but apparently she made quite an impression at your non-wedding today. Social media is a wonderful thing." Thomas's breathing grew heavy. "If I do this, if I tell everyone the truth, will you help Rachel?" "Help her how?" "She needs somewhere to stay. The apartment's gone. My credit's shot. She has nothing." "Whose fault is that?" "Mine," he admitted, the words seemingly dragged from him. "It's my fault. All of it. Is that what you want to hear?" "It's a start. Put Rachel back on." More shuffling. Rachel's voice returned smaller now. "I'm here." "Do you want to leave him?" I asked directly. "Not because I'm asking, not because you're homeless, but because you genuinely want out." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I knew the moment I saw those lawsuits you showed me, but I was too proud to admit it, too deep in his lies, too afraid of proving everyone right who said I was making a mistake." "Pride's expensive," I observed. "Today's bill was about $100,000. "I know. God, Lynn, I know. I'll pay you back, every penny. It'll take years, but I'll do it." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" I looked at Maria, who nodded encouragingly. "I want my sister back. The real one, not the stranger Thomas created. I want honesty even when it's painful. I want you to get therapy to understand how you fell for his manipulation. I want boundaries that protect both of us, and I want Thomas completely out of our lives." "Done," Rachel said immediately. "All of it. Done." "Don't agree so quickly. This isn't a simple fix. It's months or years of hard work, rebuilding trust, facing uncomfortable truths about yourself and our relationship." "I understand." "Do you? Because 6 months ago you sat right here and promised Thomas wouldn't come between us. Look how that turned out." "This is different." "Why? Because you're desperate. Because you need something from me. That's not change, Rachel. That's survival." "You're right," she admitted after a pause. "I am desperate and scared and ashamed. But I also watched 200 people learn the truth about who I chose over you today. I saw Thomas's true face when the money ran out. I heard Gloria call me a charity case to my face. If that's not rock bottom, I don't know what is." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of decision. Maria remained silent, letting me choose. "Here's what's going to happen," I said finally. "Thomas, you'll publicly admit everything. Social media posts, emails, whatever it takes. You'll return Rachel's engagement ring and any gifts from guests. You'll sign whatever paperwork she needs for a clean break. Do all that, and I won't pursue legal action for fraud." "Fraud, I didn't." "You knowingly let vendors believe you were the paying party. You signed documents as host of the wedding. Your mother told hotel staff she'd arranged everything. That's fraud, Thomas. Ask your lawyer." His silence spoke volumes. "Rachel," I continued, "you'll stay in a hotel tonight. My treat, but not the Ritz. Tomorrow we'll talk. Really talk. If I believe you're serious about changing, we'll discuss next steps. But Thomas doesn't get my address. Ever. That's non-negotiable." "Understood," Rachel said quickly. "Thank you. I know I don't deserve—" "You're right. You don't. But Mom and Dad wouldn't want me to leave you on the street, no matter what you've done." "This is extortion," Thomas interjected. "This is consequence," I corrected. "Something you've apparently never faced before. Welcome to the real world where actions have prices and lies have expiration dates. I should have let my mother handle you from the beginning." He snarled, mask finally off completely. "Your mother couldn't handle a paper bag without claiming someone else bought it for her," I shot back. "The Morrison name might mean something in her little social circle, but in the real world, you're just another grifter who got caught." "Lynn." Rachel's voice was stronger now. "Can I tell you something? When I was standing in that lobby watching everything fall apart, you know what I felt? Relief. Actual relief. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale." "Manipulation will do that to you." "It wasn't just that. It was—" I kept picturing Mom and Dad at the wedding. How confused they'd be. Why isn't Lynn in the wedding party? Why is she sitting in the back? Why are strangers taking credit for her generosity? And I realized I'd created a wedding. They'd hate marrying a man they'd despise. The emotion in her voice seemed genuine, but I'd thought that before. "We'll see," I said. "Thomas, you have 24 hours to start posting the truth. Rachel, check into the Marriott downtown. I'll call ahead with my credit card. We'll meet tomorrow at 2. Neutral ground." "Okay," Rachel agreed. "Lynn, I love you." I couldn't say it back. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. "Tomorrow," I said instead, and hung up. Maria poured more wine. "Think she means it?" "I think she means it right now. Whether she'll mean it when things get hard again, that's the real question." And Thomas. I pulled up my Instagram, watching the tagged posts from wedding guests roll in. The disaster was already public. Thomas is about to learn that the internet never forgets. By tomorrow, everyone in his industry will know exactly who he is. "Good," Maria raised her glass. "To consequences." "To truth," I countered. We clinked glasses as my phone buzzed with notifications. The first was from the Marriott confirming Rachel's reservation. The second was from Ashley at the Ritz, sharing that Thomas had been escorted from the property after attempting to argue with management about liability. But the third made me smile, a photo from Patricia, the florist, showing the women's shelter dining room transformed with white roses and baby's breath residents smiling as they enjoyed an unexpected touch of beauty in their difficult lives. Maybe something good had come from this disaster after all. And maybe, just maybe, my sister and I could build something better from the ruins. Time would tell. Time and truth and the hard work of healing that no amount of money could buy. That evening, as Seattle's skyline glittered outside my apartment windows, I sat with my laptop open, watching Thomas Morrison's carefully constructed image crumble in real time. He'd apparently decided that immediate compliance was better than whatever legal consequences I might pursue, because at exactly 8:47, his first confession appeared on Facebook. I need to set the record straight about today's events. It began. Even in admission, he couldn't resist trying to control the narrative. The Morrison-Chen wedding was canceled due to my failure to secure proper funding. Contrary to what many believed, the entire event was generously financed by Lynn Chen, not myself. Within minutes, comments exploded beneath the post. His college fraternity brothers expressed shock. Business contacts quietly unfriended him. Gloria's society friends posted variations of, "I knew something was off," with barely concealed glee. But Thomas wasn't done. Whether from legal fear or genuine recognition of his situation, he continued posting throughout the night. Each admission peeled back another layer of deception. I deliberately misled family and friends about my financial situation. I isolated my fiancée from her sister, who had raised her after their parents' death. I took credit for another person's generosity while simultaneously excluding them from the celebration. By midnight, the story had spread beyond our immediate circle. A local blogger picked it up, titling her piece, "The $100,000 Wedding Scam That Shocked Seattle Society." She'd even managed to interview Melissa, who provided colorful commentary about patterns of behavior. I couldn't sleep, so I sat on my couch laptop warm against my legs, watching years of lies unravel in hours. Maria had gone home around 10, but she texted constantly. "Did you see Gloria's page? She's claiming temporary insanity." Someone tagged Thomas's employer. "This won't end well for his sales career." Rachel posted something. "You need to see this." I navigated to Rachel's page with trepidation. Her post was shorter than Thomas's, but more honest. Today I was supposed to marry Thomas Morrison. Instead, I discovered I'd been preparing to marry an illusion. My sister Lynn offered to pay for my dream wedding as a gift of love, honoring our late parents' wishes. I repaid her generosity by allowing my fiancé to take credit, isolate me from her, and ultimately ban her from attending. I chose a manipulative liar over the woman who sacrificed everything to raise me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. I'm simply sorry, publicly and privately, for the pain I caused someone who deserved only gratitude and love. The comments under her post were mixed. Some offered sympathy for a woman clearly manipulated. Others were less kind, pointing out that she'd been complicit in the deception for months. A few mutual friends remained supportive, but confused, asking for details she didn't provide. My phone rang at 12:30, an unknown number with a Seattle area code. Lynn Chen. The female voice was unfamiliar but urgent. "This is Diane Whitman from the Seattle Business Journal. I'm working on a story about today's wedding cancellation and its business implications. I understand you were the actual financier." "No comment," I said automatically. "I appreciate your position, but Thomas Morrison has made some serious allegations about contract interference. Care to respond?" "Thomas Morrison is welcome to pursue any legal avenue he chooses. I'm confident in my position. Sources suggest this involved significant financial fraud. Can you confirm the amount?" "Again, no comment. Have a good evening." I hung up immediately, calling Jonathan despite the late hour. He answered on the second ring, sounding fully awake. "I was expecting this," he said after I explained. "Thomas is trying to control the narrative even while confessing, making you the villain who overreacted to a simple misunderstanding." "What do I do?" "Nothing. Let him hang himself with his own words. The more he talks, the worse he looks. Meanwhile, I'll draft a statement in case any media outlet wants your side." After we hung up, I found myself standing in my spare bedroom, which doubled as an office. The wedding planning binder sat on the desk, 6 months of work documented in meticulous detail. Vendor contracts, inspiration photos, comparison spreadsheets, all testifying to the effort I'd poured into creating Rachel's perfect day. On impulse, I photographed a few key pages, the contracts clearly showing my name, the budget breakdowns in my handwriting, the sweet notes from vendors thanking me for my business. If Thomas wanted to play the media game, I'd be ready. A knock at my door made me jump. At this hour, it could only be bad news. I checked the peephole to find Rachel standing in the hallway, still wearing her wedding dress, but now covered with a hotel robe. Her makeup had long since washed away, leaving her looking young and lost. "I know you said tomorrow," she began when I opened the door, "but I couldn't. I needed—" "The Marriott is downtown," I said carefully. "This is quite a detour." I went there first, checked in, sat on the bed, and realized I've been running from conversations for months. Thomas always had reasons to postpone, to avoid, to deflect. I don't want to be that person anymore. I stood aside, letting her enter. She moved carefully, the dress rustling with each step. We sat in my living room, the space between us feeling like an ocean. "Talk," I said simply. "I don't know where to start." "How about with why? Why did you let him do this? Not just today, but all of it." Rachel was quiet for so long, I wondered if she'd answer. When she did, her voice was thoughtful, as if she'd been asking herself the same question. After Mom and Dad died, you became everything: provider, protector, parent. You were 29 and suddenly responsible for a confused 19-year-old who could barely function. You never complained, never made me feel like a burden, but I knew. Every sacrifice you made, every opportunity you passed up, every date you canceled, because I needed you, I knew. I never minded, I said softly. That almost made it worse. Your selflessness highlighted my selfishness. The guilt became crushing. Then Thomas appeared, and he offered me something I didn't know I craved: the chance to not owe anyone anything. By owing him everything instead, I didn't see it that way at first. He seemed successful, independent. He talked about our future as partners equals. When he started suggesting you were controlling, it felt like permission to resent something I'd felt guilty about resenting. The money. Not the money itself, the obligation. The knowledge that I could never repay you, never balance the scales. Thomas convinced me that was unhealthy, that your generosity was a way of keeping me dependent. Do you believe that now? Rachel met my eyes for the first time since arriving. I believe Thomas saw an opportunity and took it. He recognized my guilt and weaponized it. But that doesn't absolve me. I chose to believe him because it was easier than examining my own feelings about our relationship, which are complicated, grateful and resentful, loving and suffocated. You saved me, Lynn, but sometimes being saved feels like being trapped even when the cage is made of love. The honesty hurt, but I appreciated it. I can understand that. Can you, because I've spent 6 months painting you as the villain in my story, and you just exposed my fiancé as a fraud, canceled my wedding, and somehow I still feel like the bad guy here. You are the bad guy, I said bluntly. So was I in my own way. I thought I was helping, but I never asked if my help was what you needed. I made decisions based on what I thought Mom would want, not what you actually wanted. I wanted the wedding, Rachel protested. Did you want it because that's what grieving daughters are supposed to want? A big wedding to honor dead parents, a perfect day to make up for all the days they're missing. Rachel's face crumpled. I don't know anymore. Thomas had so many opinions, and Gloria had more, and you were so excited to plan everything. I got lost somewhere in everyone else's dreams for my day. So you let Thomas uninvite me rather than admit you were drowning. He did that on his own, she said firmly. I was upset about the coffee shop, about you showing me those lawsuits. I said I needed space to think. Next thing I knew, he was showing me the sent text saying he'd handled it. And you didn't immediately call me. I was in shock. Then he kept talking, spinning it as protective necessary. By the time I processed what had happened, it felt too late. The wedding was hours away. Guests were arriving. I convinced myself we'd fix it after when everyone was calmer. There is no we with Thomas, I pointed out. There's only what he wants and how he'll get it. I know that now. Watching him in that lobby, seeing his real face when the money ran out, it was like scales falling from my eyes. Every manipulation became clear in hindsight. We sat in silence for a moment before Rachel spoke again. The shelter called me about the flowers. They wanted to thank whoever donated them. What did you tell them? The truth, that my sister turned something ugly into something beautiful like she always does. They said the residents cried. Happy tears for once. That's good. Lynn, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. I nodded. If I hadn't chosen Thomas, if I'd married someone wonderful who genuinely loved me, would you have been happy? Or would losing your role as my protector have hurt regardless? The question struck deep. I considered lying, providing the easy answer, but we'd had enough dishonesty between us. I don't know, I admitted. I like to think I'd have been purely happy for you. But you're right that I tied my identity to taking care of you. Maybe I needed you to need me more than you actually needed me. So we're both broken, Rachel said with a weak smile. Most people are. The lucky ones recognize it and try to do better. Can we do better? I don't know, I repeated. Trust is like a vase. Once shattered, you can glue it back together, but the cracks always show. I understand. Rachel stood the dress pooling around her. I should go. Thank you for letting me in. Rachel, I called as she reached the door. The dress. You can't wander Seattle in a wedding gown. She looked down as if remembering what she wore. It's all I have. Thomas was supposed to bring my overnight bag to the hotel. Of course he hadn't followed through. I disappeared into my bedroom, returning with jeans and a sweater. These should fit. She accepted them gratefully. Can I? Bathrooms down the hall. While she changed, I made tea, needing something to occupy my hands. The dress she'd dreamed about for months was about to become just expensive fabric, another casualty of the day. Rachel emerged looking more like herself than she had in months. The designer gown hung over her arm awkwardly. Keep it, I said. Sell it, donate it, burn it, whatever helps. I think I'll donate it. Someone should get joy from it. At the door, she paused again. Tomorrow at 2, still. Soma coffee on pine, neutral ground. I'll be there. She met my eyes. Lynn, I know sorry isn't enough. I know I broke something precious. But I want you to know that losing you hurts worse than losing him ever could. That has to mean something, right? It means something. I agreed. What exactly we'll have to figure out. After she left, I sat with my tea, watching the city lights blur through sudden tears. The day had cost me $100,000 and possibly a sister, but it had also revealed truth beneath years of carefully constructed lies. Maybe that was worth any price. My phone lit up with more notifications. Thomas's confessions continued to ripple through social media. Local news had picked up the story. By morning, everyone would know. But for now, I sat in my quiet apartment processing the first honest conversation my sister and I had shared in months. The cracks were showing, but perhaps that's where the light gets in. The following week unfolded like a slow-motion catastrophe for Thomas Morrison, each day bringing new consequences for his years of deception. I watched from a careful distance, focusing on my own healing, while the universe delivered the justice I'd set in motion. Monday morning brought the professional fallout. Thomas's employer, Meridian Pharmaceuticals, had apparently spent the weekend fielding calls from concerned clients who'd seen the social media explosion. His territory included several medical practices whose partners belonged to Gloria's Country Club. By noon, HR had called him in for a meeting about reputational damage inconsistent with company values. He's been terminated, Maria informed me over lunch. My friend in their accounting department says security escorted him out with a box of his things. Apparently, he tried to claim wrongful termination until they showed him printouts of his own Facebook posts. I pushed salad around my plate, feeling neither satisfaction nor guilt. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Speaking of prizes, did you see what Gloria's been up to? Maria pulled up her phone, showing me a series of increasingly unhinged posts from Thomas's mother. She'd progressed from denial to anger to what appeared to be a complete break from reality, claiming she'd been the victim of an elaborate setup orchestrated by me. She's telling people you planted those lawsuits against Thomas, that you hired actors to pose as his ex-fiancé and former business partners, that this whole thing was corporate espionage because you wanted to steal his pharmaceutical patents. What patents? I laughed despite myself. The man couldn't sell water in the desert. Logic isn't her strong suit. Oh, and she's been banned from the country club. Turns out they frown on members whose sons commit fraud in the club's name. Tuesday's meeting with Rachel at the coffee shop went better than expected. She arrived early, wearing simple clothes and no makeup, looking more like the sister I remembered from before Thomas's influence. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began after we'd ordered, about patterns, about why I was susceptible to Thomas's manipulation. And I think I've been looking for someone to take care of me since Mom and Dad died. First you, then Thomas. I never learned to stand on my own feet because someone was always there to catch me. That's my fault too, I admitted. I made it too easy for you to avoid independence. No, that's what I'm trying to say. It wasn't your job to teach me independence. You were dealing with your own grief while trying to honor our parents' memory. We both did the best we could with an impossible situation." The conversation continued for 2 hours. We discussed therapy. She'd already booked an appointment. We talked about boundaries, what healthy support looked like versus enabling. By the end, we'd agreed to weekly coffee meetings, building slowly toward whatever relationship could emerge from the wreckage. Wednesday brought unexpected viral fame. Someone had compiled all the wedding disaster posts into a Twitter thread that caught fire. The 100K wedding that never was a thread garnered 50,000 retweets in 6 hours. BuzzFeed picked it up, then Reddit. By evening, wedding scam drama was trending nationally. "You're famous," Jonathan called amused. "My niece just sent me a TikTok about the wedding. They're calling you the sister who said no more." "Please tell me my name isn't attached." "You're identified only as Lynn C., but Thomas's full name is everywhere. Good luck to him finding another job with this digital footprint." Thursday revealed the extent of Thomas's financial desperation. Multiple creditors had apparently been circling for months, held at bay by his promises of incoming wealth from his marriage to Rachel. With that avenue closed, they pounced. Rachel forwarded me screenshots from a mutual acquaintance. Thomas was attempting to sell everything: his car, his watches, even the engagement ring Rachel had returned. The description on the ring listing was particularly pathetic: genuine 2-carat diamond solitaire, worn briefly, price to sell due to urgent relocation. Urgent relocation. I asked Rachel during our check-in call. "He's moving back with his parents in Portland. Apparently it was that or homelessness." And Gloria, "Moved in with her sister in Tacoma. From what I hear, they're not speaking. She blames him for ruining her social standing. He blames her for pushing him to exclude you. It's a circular firing squad of blame." Friday afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor at my office. Patricia the florist arrived with a small bouquet and a thank you card. "I wanted to personally thank you," she said, setting the flowers on my desk. "Not just for the payment you sent for the shelter delivery, but for what those flowers meant." "You already thanked me by phone." "I know, but I needed to share something. One of the shelter residents, Maria, different." Maria, she pulled me aside when we were setting up. She said she'd been planning to give up that day, lost her job, her apartment, everything. But walking into that dining room filled with wedding flowers, flowers representing love and hope and new beginnings, changed something for her. Patricia's eyes glistened. She said if someone could transform their pain into beauty for strangers, maybe she could transform hers too. She's starting job training next week. After Patricia left, I sat with her flowers thinking about unintended consequences. I'd canceled the wedding to protect myself, but the ripple effects had spread far beyond my initial intent. Some destructive like Thomas's public humiliation, others constructive like hope blooming in unexpected places. That evening, I finally went through the wedding planning binder properly. Each page held memories, the excitement of finding the perfect venue, the joy in Rachel's eyes during cake, tasting the careful attention to details that would have made our parents proud. But underneath the sweet memories lay the bitter truth I'd been planning my vision of her perfect day, not necessarily hers. My phone rang. Rachel. "Hey," she said softly. "I just wanted you to know I got the job." "What job?" "The one at the crisis center. Remember I mentioned applying? They called today. I start training Monday." "Rachel, that's wonderful." "It's entry-level answering phones, but it's a start. My first real job that I got on my own, merits not through connections or pity." "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too," she said, and I could hear her smile. "It's a weird feeling. Good, but weird." "Get used to it. It suits you." After we hung up, I poured a glass of wine and returned to the wedding binder. But instead of sadness, I felt something closer to peace. The wedding I'd planned would never happen, but perhaps something better could emerge: two sisters learning to love each other as independent adults rather than guardian and ward. My laptop chimed with an email. The Seattle Business Journal had published their article, "When Wedding Bells Don't Ring, the High Cost of Deception in Seattle Society." They'd been surprisingly fair, focusing on financial fraud in relationships rather than sensationalizing the family drama. The article's conclusion caught my attention. While the Morrison Chen wedding implosion offers a cautionary tale about trust and money, it also demonstrates the power of truth. Sometimes the most generous gift isn't funding someone's dreams, but forcing them to confront their reality. I closed the laptop and raised my glass to the empty room. To reality, I toasted. Expensive, painful, necessary reality. Outside, Seattle sparkled in the darkness, indifferent to small human dramas. But in apartments and houses across the city, people were having conversations sparked by our story. About honesty in relationships, about financial manipulation, about the difference between love and control. The $100,000 I'd saved by canceling the wedding couldn't buy back the months of deception or heal the wounds overnight, but it had purchased something priceless, the truth, and that more than any fairy tale wedding was worth celebrating. 6 months later, spring arrived in Seattle with its usual mix of cherry blossoms and intermittent rain. I stood in my kitchen making Saturday morning coffee, a ritual that had become sacred in its simplicity. No wedding planning calls, no vendor meetings, no drama. Just quiet mornings and the slow work of rebuilding. Rachel arrived at 9:30 punctual as she'd become since starting therapy. She carried a box of pastries from our favorite bakery and wore scrubs from her job at the crisis center, where she'd been promoted to shift supervisor after just 4 months. "Rough night?" I asked, noting the shadows under her eyes. Had a caller threatening self-harm. Talked for 3 hours until we could get emergency services to her location. She's safe now. Rachel poured her own coffee, comfortable in my space, in a way that had taken months to achieve. It's exhausting, but meaningful, like I'm finally giving back instead of just taking. We settled on the couch, the same spot where we'd had our first honest conversation after the wedding disaster. The space between us had shrunk over time, filled with carefully rebuilt trust and mutual respect. "I have news," Rachel said, pulling out her phone. "Thomas tried to contact me." My hand tightened on my mug. "How?" "LinkedIn of all places. Send a connection request with a message about exploring synergies and past misunderstandings. I screenshot it before blocking him." She showed me the message, Thomas's desperate attempt at professional networking, barely masking his real intention. According to his profile, he was now a business development consultant in Portland, which probably meant unemployed and living in his parents' basement. "Good for you for blocking him," I said. 6 months ago." 6 months ago, I might have responded, Rachel finished. "I know, Dr. Martinez calls it progress." Her therapist had become a crucial part of Rachel's transformation. Through their work together, she'd uncovered patterns of codependency, stretching back to childhood, exacerbated by our parents' death and exploited by Thomas's manipulation. "Speaking of progress," Rachel continued, "I signed a lease." "You did where?" "A studio in Fremont. It's tiny and the radiator clanks, but it's mine. First place I've ever had completely on my own." "I'm proud of you." The words came easier now, stripped of the complicated dynamics that once tangled every interaction. "I put down the deposit myself, from my savings, my actual savings from my actual job." She laughed, the sound free and genuine. Who knew being financially independent could feel so good? "Everyone who's never had a Thomas in their life," I replied dryly. We both laughed, then the kind of healing laughter that comes from surviving something terrible together. The wedding disaster had become something we could reference without pain, transformed from trauma to teaching moment. My phone buzzed, a text from Maria with a link. "You'll want to see this." The link led to a Seattle Times article about fraud in the pharmaceutical industry. Buried in the third paragraph was a familiar name Thomas Morrison cited as an example of sales representatives who falsified credentials. Apparently, his LinkedIn consulting claims had attracted the wrong kind of attention from investigators. "Karma's patient but thorough." Rachel observed, reading over my shoulder. Feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for the woman he'll inevitably target next, but maybe this article will serve as a warning. She paused. Do you think I should reach out to Melissa, warn her that he's trying to rebuild his image? Melissa can take care of herself, but the fact that you're thinking about protecting other women shows how far you've come. Rachel's phone chimed with a calendar reminder. I need to go. Volunteer shift at the shelter starts at noon. The women's shelter? She nodded. Started last month. Figured I should give back to the place that got our wedding flowers. They do amazing work with limited resources. As she gathered her things, I felt the familiar pride that had replaced my previous need to control. Rachel was building a life of purpose and independence, becoming someone our parents would recognize and admire. Before you go, I said, retrieving something from my desk, I want you to have this. The envelope contained a check for $10,000. Rachel's hands shook as she opened it. Lynn, I can't. It's not charity, it's not control. It's an investment in your future from the money I saved on vendors. Consider it a graduation gift, graduation from being someone's victim to being your own hero. Tears ran down her face. This is too much. It's exactly enough. Use it for furniture or save it for emergencies or invest it. Your choice. No strings, no expectations. She hugged me then, fierce and grateful. How did we get here from where we were? One honest conversation at a time, I said into her hair. One boundary at a time, one day at a time. After she left, I returned to my coffee and the quiet satisfaction of a Saturday without obligations. My phone showed a few notifications, Jonathan confirming lunch plans, a client praising yesterday's presentation, a reminder about tomorrow's yoga class. Normal life, beautifully mundane. The wedding binder still sat on my bookshelf, but I rarely looked at it anymore. Those pages represented a different time when I'd tried to fix grief with money and confused caretaking with love. Now I understood that true love meant letting people fail, learn, and grow on their own terms. That afternoon, I met Maria for a walk around Green Lake. The path was crowded with families enjoying the spring weather, and we had to dodge enthusiastic dogs and determined joggers. So Rachel's really doing well? Maria asked. She is. Therapy job, new apartment. She's becoming who she might have been if our parents had lived independent but connected, strong but kind. And you? I considered the question. I'm learning too. How to have relationships without rescue missions. How to love without controlling. It's harder than writing checks, but healthier. Any word from the Morrison camp? Gloria apparently joined an evangelical church and claims the whole thing was spiritual warfare. She posts a lot about forgiveness, while simultaneously condemning everyone who wronged her. Maria laughed. Sounds about right. And Thomas? Professionally destroyed, socially radioactive living with parents who blame each other for raising him wrong. Couldn't have happened to a more deserving person. We walked in comfortable silence before Maria spoke again. You know what I admire about how you handled everything. You could have let it slide, eaten the cost, avoided the confrontation. Most people would have. Most people aren't CFOs who understand that small losses compound into catastrophic ones. I saw the wedding as a sunk cost, but my self-respect, that was an asset worth protecting. Very financially sound of you, Maria teased. I have my moments. That evening, I attended a charity gala for the women's shelter, my company having become a major donor after the flower incident. Rachel was there in her volunteer capacity, manning the registration table with genuine enthusiasm. We nodded at each other across the room, supportive but separate, connected but not codependent. During the program, the shelter director mentioned the wedding flowers that had arrived on a day of unexpected beauty amid hardship. She didn't know the full story, and I didn't enlighten her. Some gifts are better anonymous, their power in the giving rather than the credit. The evening reminded me that even disasters can nurture good. The wedding that never was had scattered seeds of change, Rachel's independence, my healthier boundaries, support for vulnerable women, and truth in a world too comfortable with deception. As I prepared to leave, Rachel intercepted me near the exit. "Thank you for coming," she said formally, then broke into a grin. "God, that sounded stiff. What I mean is, it means a lot, seeing you here supporting something I care about." "Wouldn't miss it. You're doing important work." "I learned from the best," she said, then quickly added, "about giving, I mean, not about picking men, clearly." We both laughed, another moment of healing in our collection of small recoveries. "Drive safe," I said. "See you next Saturday." "Wouldn't miss it. I'm bringing those cheese danishes you pretend not to love." "I don't pretend anything anymore," I reminded her. "No," she agreed softly. "Neither of us does. That's the gift, isn't it, Truth, even when it costs everything." Driving home through Seattle's sparkling nights, I reflected on her words. The Truth had cost us $100,000 a fantasy wedding and months of comfortable lies. But it had given us something priceless, the chance to build a relationship based on reality rather than roles choice, rather than obligation, love rather than guilt. 6 months ago, I'd been prepared to lose my sister forever. Now I was discovering I'd never really had her, not as her authentic self. The Rachel emerging from therapy and independence was someone worth knowing, worth supporting, worth celebrating. Not as my ward or responsibility, but as my equal. The wedding that wasn't had been our family's most expensive disaster and greatest blessing. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone isn't what they think they want, but the push toward what they actually need. Even when that push feels like abandonment, even when it breaks everything before it heals anything. Especially then. 1 year after the wedding that never was, Rachel organized a small gathering in the backyard of her apartment building. She'd transformed the modest space with string lights and potted plants, creating an intimate oasis in the middle of the city. The October afternoon was unseasonably warm Seattle, offering one of its rare perfect days, as if in blessing. I arrived to find about 20 people already mingling, Rachel's co-workers from the crisis center, fellow volunteers from the shelter, a few friends from her therapy group, and Maria, who'd become as much Rachel's friend as mine over the past months. The atmosphere was casual but meaningful, everyone there, because they'd become part of Rachel's journey toward independence. Lynn Rachel hurried over radiant in a simple sundress. No designer labels, no expensive accessories, just my sister looking genuinely happy. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss your graduation party," I said, handing her a small wrapped gift. "It's not really a graduation party," she protested, but her smile said otherwise. Today marked multiple milestones: her completion of nursing school prerequisites, her 1-year anniversary at the crisis center, and most importantly, a full year of independence. She'd insisted on celebrating with the people who'd supported her transformation. "Is that David?" I asked, noticing a tall man helping set up chairs. Rachel blushed slightly. "From my therapy group, yes. We've been friends for months. Just friends," she added quickly. "Dr. Martinez says I need at least 2 years of solid single life before even considering dating." Smart advice. The smartest. David's actually been great about boundaries. He's working through his own codependency issues. We joke that we're recovery buddies. I watched her interact with her guests, noting the quiet confidence she'd developed. This wasn't the girl who'd let others speak for her, or the woman who'd hidden behind her fiancé. This was Rachel 2.0, self-assured, independent, and grounded in reality. The party unfolded with easy warmth. No catered food or professional photographers, just potluck dishes and genuine laughter. Rachel had made a photo display chronicling her year of growth, receiving her crisis center certification, volunteering at the shelter, starting classes, moving into her apartment. Notably absent were any references to the wedding disaster, though everyone here knew the story. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Rachel called out as the sun began its descent. I wanted to say a few words. The small crowd gathered, holding plastic cups of lemonade and cheap wine. Rachel stood near the dessert table, a simple sheet cake from a grocery store, not a 7-tier architectural marvel. "A year ago, my life imploded." She began, her voice steady. "I was supposed to marry someone who didn't exist in a wedding I couldn't afford, playing a role that was slowly killing me. The implosion was public, humiliating, and absolutely necessary. Murmurs of support rippled through the group. These people had heard pieces of the story, but not this direct acknowledgement. The person I need to thank most is my sister Lynn. Rachel found my eyes across the yard. She gave me the most difficult gift anyone's ever given me, the truth. She refused to enable my delusions even when it meant risking our relationship. I felt tears threaten but blinked them back. This wasn't my moment, it was hers. Lynn raised me after our parents died when I was 22. For 3 years, she put her life on hold to make sure I had one. I repaid that sacrifice by choosing someone who systematically turned me against her. I let him convince me that love was control, that generosity was manipulation, that the person who'd given everything for me was somehow my enemy. "You were manipulated," someone called out. "It wasn't your fault." "Thank you, but it was partially my fault," Rachel corrected gently. "I had agency. I made choices. Acknowledging that is part of recovery. I chose comfort over truth, ease over integrity. And when Lynn was uninvited from the wedding, she'd paid for yes. She paid for all of it. I chose silence over standing up for what was right." The yard was quiet except for distant traffic and a neighbor's music. "But here's what I've learned." Rachel continued stronger now. Rock bottom can be a foundation. Losing everything fake makes room for everything real. The wedding that didn't happen was worth more than the marriage that shouldn't have happened. "Amen," Maria said quietly, raising her cup. "This past year, I've built something I never had before my own life. My job, my apartment, my friendships, my choices. Not perfect, but mine. And Lynn," her voice caught. "Lynn gave me the space to do that. She could have swooped in, taken over, fixed everything like she always had. Instead, she let me struggle, fail, learn, and ultimately succeed on my own terms." Rachel picked up her own cup, raising it toward me. "So this is my public thank you to my sister. Not for the money she's given over the years, but for the love that knew when to let go. Not for the wedding that wasn't, but for the life that is. Thank you for saving me, by refusing to save me." The toast that followed was tearful and heartfelt. I found myself surrounded by people thanking me for my strength, though I'd never felt particularly strong during those dark days. Rachel made her way through the crowd to wrap me in a hug that lasted long enough to say everything words couldn't. As the party continued, I found myself in conversation with David, the potential maybe someday boyfriend, who understood the importance of timing. "Rachel's told me a lot about you," he said carefully. "All good things. She really admires how you handled everything. She's the one who did the hard work." "True. But you did something harder. You trusted her to do it." He smiled, and I could see why Rachel liked him. Kind eyes, gentle manner, and most importantly, his own journey of self-improvement. My ex-wife used to fix everything for me. When she finally stopped, I hated her for it. Took 2 years of therapy to realize she'd given me the gift of having to grow up. "Are you," I asked directly, "grown up?" "Working on it. Same as Rachel. Same as everyone, really." He excused himself to help with something, leaving me to appreciate his emotional intelligence. If Rachel did eventually date him, at least she'd chosen someone who understood the work required for healthy relationships. The party wound down as darkness fell. I helped clean up, working alongside Rachel's new community of supporters. These weren't the society people who'd filled the Ritz-Carlton lobby. These were real friends who'd shown up during the difficult rebuilding, not just for the glamorous celebration. As I prepared to leave, Rachel handed me an envelope. "Don't open it until you get home," she instructed. "What is it?" "Just something I needed to say, privately." The drive home was quiet Seattle's Saturday night traffic providing thinking time. A year ago, I'd driven these same streets in wedding day finery, heartbroken and furious. Now I drove them in jeans and a comfortable sweater, content with how our story had evolved. At home, I opened Rachel's envelope to find a handwritten letter and a check for $5,000. The letter read, "Lynn, this is the first payment of many. Not because you need the money or because I need to repay you. Dr. Martinez says financial scorekeeping between family is toxic. This is because I need to do this for me, to prove I can, to transform a debt of guilt into an act of love. You gave me more than money. You gave me 3 years of your 20s. You gave me stability when the world fell apart. You gave me the chance to be ungrateful, foolish, and cruel, yet still welcomed me back when I found my way home. The woman I'm becoming wants to give back not from obligation, but from abundance. Not because I owe you, but because I love you. The checks will be small and probably irregular, but they'll come from money I earned at a job I'm proud of, living a life I built myself. Thank you for loving me enough to let me fall. Thank you for being there when I learned to stand. Thank you for showing me that the best sisters don't just share blood or history, they share the courage to grow. All my love, Rachel. P.S. I'm volunteering at the shelter's annual gala next month. I've already put you down for a table. No arguments. We're honoring major donors, and the flower donation story has become legend. Time to own it. I set the letter aside and looked at the check. $5,000 wasn't much against a $100,000 wedding, but it represented everything. Hours of crisis calls handled with compassion, nights of studying after exhausting shifts, budgeting and saving and choosing necessity over want. This money carried weight beyond its numerical value. Tomorrow I'd deposit it, but tonight I'd simply be grateful for the sister who'd found her strength, for the relationship we'd rebuilt on honesty, for the wedding disaster that became our salvation. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Did you open it? Yes, I replied. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too. See you next Saturday. Wouldn't miss it. I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto my balcony, city lights twinkling below. Somewhere out there, Thomas Morrison was probably spinning new schemes to new victims. Gloria was likely boring her church friends with tales of persecution. But here, in this moment, 2 sisters had found their way back to each other through the ruins of what should never have been. The wedding we'd planned would have been beautiful. The marriage would have been a disaster. The cancellation had been brutal, but the growth that followed, that was worth more than any party could have cost. To family, I toasted silently. To truth, to the courage to let go and the wisdom to know when. To happy endings that look nothing like the fairy tales we imagined, but everything like the reality we needed. Looking back, I realized the $100,000 was never really lost. It was transformed into flowers for women who needed beauty food for families, who needed nourishment, and most importantly, truth for a family drowning in lies. Some investments pay dividends in unexpected ways. Sometimes the best wedding gift you can give someone is the wedding that never happens. If you've ever faced a similar situation, choosing between enabling someone's fantasy or forcing their reality, I hope our story gives you courage. The immediate pain of truth is nothing compared to the prolonged agony of deception. Thank you for listening to our journey. May your own relationships be built on foundations stronger than money, prettier than parties, and more enduring than any single day could capture. Share your thoughts. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and telling the truth? What would you have done in Lynn's situation? Comment below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, the most expensive lies are the ones we tell ourselves, and the most valuable gifts are often the ones that cost us everything but money.